Good morning. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Policy Committee of the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization, the TPO, and we'll start this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if we can start with, I don't know, do we have anybody virtually? But I guess actually here we do a roll call anyway, right? Okay. I wasn't. Okay. If we could do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Kemp?
Here.
Commissioner Cohen is excused. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Councilman Maniscalco also excused. Commissioner Overman?
Here.
Bob Frey? Commissioner Myers is also excused, and Charles Klug. Here. We also have Adelie LeGrand and Commissioner Kilton from the TPO board with us today.
Thank you. So I don't think I have, I don't know if it needs to be official.
We don't have members of this committee.
Okay. I was just concerned if I had anything to read into the record with regards to that. Okay, thank you. How are we doing?
Mariella, turn your mic on.
Huh?
See that?
Okay.
That's better.
Just a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So with that, let's go to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Commissioner Smith moved, seconded by Commissioner Overman. And with that, if we, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say
Aye.
aye. Any non-approvals? Okay. Seeing none, let's move to, I think we have public comment, and we have a one person signed up this morning, Candace Savitz. Is that person?
I'm here, Candace Savitz.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. You
Yes.
have 3 minutes.
I just want to read some stuff into the record. My name is Candace Lane Savitz. I'm a homeowner in Tampa Heights for 17 years now. I believe the SDOT 275 expansion project is poisoning us. Allow me to explain. I go to Winn-Dixie on Martin Luther King in Tampa Heights several times per week. I always take the back road. When I return home, I use Taliaferro to Lake Avenue. I drive right by this construction site. In March of 2022, I was returning home. I had my car windows down, and immediately upon entering Taliaferro from the Winn-Dixie parking lot, I was hit with a gust of toxic dust. This dust choked me up and left a gas flavor in my mouth. My primary care doctor is sending me to an ENT. At this time, I saw men with jackhammers blasting the old concrete from the 275 overpass to expose the rebar on the east side of the interstate. Now I have documented that there is exposed rebar at Florabraska, Lake, Chelsea, Martin Luther King, Osborne, and Hillsborough overpasses. It would be reasonable to assume that jackhammering was used on all these. The pulverization of this old highway creates toxic dust. There was no dust mitigation in place that I could see or document, no water truck spraying to keep down the dust, no dust mesh to capture the dust that is 20 feet high in the air on top of the overpass. I spoke with another Tampa Heights resident who owns a home on Lake, Jessica Pierce. She also has breathing problems and is worried that she's being harmed by toxic dust. She has spoken up about this recently at our Tampa Heights Civic Association meeting, where Mayor Castor was our guest speaker. Concrete dust is poisonous. It contains crystalline silica. Breathing this dust can produce severe lung damage called silicosis. Silicosis can lead to total disability and may also cause death. This information is easy to look up. It is real. As it stands now, only the east side of the 275 project has exposed rebar. FDOT has not started pulverizing the west side yet. Since there's obviously a danger to the public with this project due to the lack of dust mitigation and supervision, I strongly support stopping this project to determine how much toxic dust has been put upon my neighbors in the community of Tampa Heights and Seminole Heights. Let's protect our residents from this poisonous project. Perhaps this project needs oversight at the federal level. Thank you. And I am emailing a copy of my statement to the TPO.
Thank you, Ms. Savitz. Yes, Ms. Alden.
We do have one more public commenter
Oh.
signed in and online, and that is Mr. Rick Fernandez.
Okay. We'll go to that, and then I have some questions. Okay, Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, Chair, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Introduction, Rick Fernandez, 2906 North Elmore, Tampa 33602. That's in Tampa Heights. My written submissions are incorporated by reference. My verbal comments today will focus on the PPP, your agenda item 5B. You have before you for approval a so-called PPP Effectiveness Report. That's the Public Participation Plan Effectiveness Report for 2020 through 21. It fails to address the abject failure that has been the public participation process related to the DTI and Tampa Heights during this reporting period. It fails to take a deep dive, or for that matter, any dive at all, into the debacle that is the relationship among the community, FDOT, the TPO board, and staff. That failure marks this document for rejection and rewrite. It should be returned to the author or authors with instructions for rewrite and removed from the TPO board's consent agenda at today's meeting. These issues were fully litigated, or at least as fully as possible, during your TPO board meeting in February. The facts were further documented in a resolution approved by the CAC in January and a motion to strike tip amendments approved by the CAC in March. In essence, citizens did the research and documentation for the period from 2018 through 2022, and the authors have ignored the work product. Ironically, the only mention of community disapproval related to the DTI appears on page 30 of the report, and there the authors got it wrong. They present an incomplete picture of events occurring during your TIP public hearing in June of 2021 and incorrectly document the advice of counsel related to the so-called point of no return statute. My written comments elaborate further. At the conclusion of that February board meeting, after 90 minutes of public comment and documentary presentations, Chair Cohen made this comment: "This has not been our best day as a community. What we need to do is use this as a learning tool to do better," quote unquote. I put to the policy committee this question: how are we to learn and do better if mistakes are not officially acknowledged and documented? I ask that you reject the report and submit it for rewrite, and would note that the CAC made a recommendation consistent with this request, asking that there be inclusion of the information related to the communications between FDOT and the DTI and the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ms. Alden, I'm concerned very much about the dust mitigation and the toxins that would come from that, and what we have heard, and I know that there's been other, looking at other issues like this is the first time I've heard this, but it doesn't surprise me, and I know that there is significant pollution already that has can have very devastating impacts just from the existence of the road itself. And, you know, kind of, as I've mentioned before, watershed studies that have come in just the last 5 years or so that have related and poor air pollution to asthma and childhood asthma, but also to the kinds of carcinogens, cancer, maybe dementia, all of these things are being looked at. So I'm very concerned about what was said about the dust mitigation, the capturing of dust, and what I think it's important in, I mean, I'll personally contact Secretary Gwen, but I think as the MPO to this board, that we need to relay that we have this from Ms. Savage and get the information with regards to what's being done and what can be done about it, and if it's not being done, if there, you know, what we can do to mitigate it, because it is very concerning, as she had talked about, pulverizing a 50-year-old rebar and asphalt, and you know what that can mean in terms of air pollution, and asphalt does have gas in it and oil, so you know that we need to look at that. So I'd appreciate if we could follow up on that. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that.
Just that I totally concur completely.
And with that, we will move to the action items. The Smart Cities Mobility Plan is the first one. Johnny Wong and,
Excuse me, Chair Kemp.
yes.
Robert Frey has joined virtually, so we do need a vote of consent for participation.
So moved.
Second, or I can't do that. Go ahead, someone else.
Second.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Okay, okay, thank you. Okay. And with that, we will move to the Smart Cities Mobility Plan, and Johnny Wong and our staff, and Lee Woodcock of Atkins. Did you want to say anything? That's all?
No, we should have a DOT representative with us for the board meeting, so we could ask for a response today. It might make more sense to give them some time to research it and bring back a full response to you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Policy Committee. Johnny Wong, TPO staff, and I've been the project manager for the Smart Cities Mobility Plan. I'm very excited to present you with the final report
is his
today
mic on?
because we've been
Yes,
working
I
on
don't,
this.
I think your mic isn't on.
I see the light. Is that better?
That's
Yes,
better.
we
All
have
right.
to do something, I think, about the mics are not tall enough for most people to hear, and every.
I'll lean
people-
in a little bit if this is
Yeah.
okay.
That'll be
I,
fine.
I understand, but it seems like we should, this happens frequently, quite honestly. I don't know if there's a fix, but, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right. I hope that this is better.
It is better,
As I was
yes.
saying, I'm very excited to present this Smart Cities Mobility Plan to you because we've been working on this for the better part of 2 years. It was a monumental effort, and I'm very excited to see your reaction to the plan. I'm actually going to introduce my co-partner on the project, Lee Woodcock. He is the Senior Projects Manager for the Engineering Division of Atkins, and he'll present the plan. We'll both take turns fielding questions when we get to that part.
Good morning. Is the mic okay?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. I'm a lot shorter than Johnny. So yes, thank you for the opportunity to present. If we move on to the next slide. As Johnny says, we've been working on this update for more than a year. The reason why we took on this challenge was because the TPO has never had a smart cities plan before. We based some of the work on the previous Intelligent Transport Systems Master Plan. That was developed in 2013, so clearly it was 9 years old and therefore somewhat out of date. We wanted this plan to be consistent with the goals of the 2045 Long-Range Transportation Plan, namely to plan for technology that can manage infrastructure, improve safety, improve reliability, mobility, and facilitate economic growth. The third goal was to develop a rough roadmap to guide future developments to make sure that we're supporting technology that is agreeable and valuable to all in the county. Goals 4 and 5 were closely related and pertain to educating the public about smart cities technologies and to address any worries and concerns that they might have around the acceleration of deployments of this technology and also to fund these technologies going forward as part of our future roadmap. Move on to the next slide. We broke down the tasks into 4 main areas. The first one was project discovery and inventory. This task was basically a literary review to look nationally and internationally what small, medium and large metro areas were doing in regards to their smart cities deployments and see what lessons we could learn as a result of that exercise. Because many of the technology components are critical to making a region smart, we categorized many as we could to the 5 project categories as part of the LRTP. So namely, we color-coded projects related to safety, orange, smart cities, purple, etc. Where we couldn't allocate one of those smart cities technologies that we reviewed against one of the 5, we color-coded them grey as in other. Next slide. The team researched more than 100 smart city plans and documents, pulling out as many technologies and strategies that were identified, and we created a portfolio of each to determine whether or not the technology was existing or emerging, which LRTP goal it aligned to, and whether the impact could be deployed in the short, medium, or long term, as well as factors around the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities as opportunities and threats associated with those technologies. Next slide. Once we had the literary review completed, we used it to produce 15 pamphlets describing that technology in plain language, what it was used for, successful examples of that technology, and where it had been used elsewhere, both nationally and internationally. Even though that planning work is complete, we think these pamphlets are a valuable tool to be able to educate the public in these technologies, as well as being able to support planners around smart cities technologies across the region as well. Next slide. Task 2 was to define a baseline of current deployments and to see how we could compare both within the state and nationally around some of the technologies that we've deployed. And this baseline will also enable us to track performance over time. We move to the next slide. We wanted to make a mapping tool that would be available to our partners. So we collected GIS files of those technology deployments from Hillsborough County, the cities, FIA, and FDOT. We're still awaiting some files from some partners, but this will be available on our data platform in the near future, and we hope to be able to share that at an up-and-coming Smart Cities Alliance meeting in the future. But what we did do is we created a spreadsheet as part of the deliverable, and I'll talk about that next. Can we go to the next slide? So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the groupings around smart transportation. And this is just one of the areas that we looked at as part of that literary review. The color coding aligns to the 5 LRT project categories. And what we've done is we created a list of the associated technology deployments around smart transportation. The color coding in the middle column associates that technology is in region today, and the color coding on the right-hand side says it's not in region. So we have that baseline understanding of what we've got versus what we might be able to deploy and how it could align to the 2045 LRTP. Next slide. As I mentioned, we've obtained a number of shape files from partners. Some of those have been added to the data platform so far. We're waiting on some more, but as I mentioned, hopefully in the near future, this will be a good repository of information that all stakeholders can use around the technologies that will be available or available in the region. Next slide. The third task was one of the most important for the TPO. because it involved creating a new way to rank smart cities projects that are seeking funding. This is important to us because our old prioritization process to evaluate these kind of projects, technology projects, was not working particularly well. This was made clear as part of the TIP process last time, where we knew we had a project of huge significant value, but it ranked the lowest, it ranked at the bottom of the list. So our goal around this task was to give valuable smart cities projects a fighting chance to receive funds. Next slide. To address this, we created a new prioritization matrix that awards points based on whether it achieves the LRTP goals, the associated costs, how long it would take to deploy, whether it facilitates equity, limits risk, and the benefit-cost ratio associated with it, just to name a few factors. We presented this draft matrix to the policy committee last November, and it was well received. But following that discussion, we took the extra step of meeting with staff in all public agencies across the region, explaining to them how the scoring works, and actually applied that matrix to some of their existing projects so we could see how it would work in reality for them. We received some general comments, but overall, nothing that required the matrix to change. Next slide. Based on the reception we got from the policy committee last time, we feel it is likely that the matrix will be adopted by the board. So we use the scoring system to evaluate some projects we received as part of this year's TIP prioritization process. So if the matrix is approved by the board, it will include 3 new projects that have gone through that matrix in itself. And these are being proposed to us by our partner agencies. Next slide. The final task was not scoped in the contract because we originally assumed that this was going to be a technical document. But through that literature review, it highlighted some particular issues around public acceptability and trust around some of these technologies. So we decided to solicit feedback from the public. We identified technology that we felt would could compromise support from the public, specifically some technologies that have implications around equity, privacy, and security. Next slide. Prior to wrapping up the work, we made 6 presentations on the topic of smart cities during the Great American Teach-In, and we also sent students, teachers, and the parents home with a link to a survey that promoted a survey, which we also promoted on the social media accounts. We also solicited feedback from the Smart Cities Alliance, the TPO ITS Committee, agency staff during an info barbecue, and then once the plan was nearing the final phase, we had one-to-one briefings with all the public agencies to review the plan and ask for their feedback. Next slide. After about a month of review and some general feedback, we received letters of support from Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, Temple Terrace, FDOT, and FIA. In terms of the questionnaire that we sent to the school students, the teachers, and the parents, it's included in the feedback is included in the report, but it's important to note that 70 respondents isn't nearly enough to decide the course of action, whether to deploy a technology or not. Our hope is to be able to translate these results into action for agencies to consider that some parts of society, some parts of the segments of society will find some technologies acceptable and others won't, but we need to go through that process of engaging them. For instance, some technologies were broadly accepted, such as light sensors, smart street lights, transit apps, whereas others that had an impact on equity or privacy or security or even touched on law enforcement, such as facial recognition or red light cameras, actually had the adverse impact where some people obviously were not comfortable with those technologies and needed to kind of understand a little bit more. Next slide. The plan recommendations are on the slide. I'll read through them. They are intelligently deploy the latest smart cities technologies, to allow for the monitoring, assessment, and management of the transportation network. Translate performance insights into action and provide safe, efficient, convenient, and equitable transportation options across Hillsborough County. Plan for the deployment of the highest-ranking projects by the gap analysis and included in the technology map that we delivered as part of the project. Use the Prioritization Matrix to appropriately score Smart Cities projects as part of the TIP. Seek new funding sources for the Smart Cities program to accelerate deployments. And finally, utilize the Smart Cities fact sheets, the pamphlets, to engage and inform the general public of the benefits of these technologies. The next slide. And the overarching recommendation of the action is to approve the report and forward to the TPO board for consent. Thank you. Any questions?
Commissioner Overman.
Thank you very much for this report. I've been looking at this very carefully for a whole lot of reasons. One was, you know, the Federal Infrastructure Act has broadband as part of a structure that ultimately has to be a state-written plan, as well as the electric charging station infrastructure efforts. We have an opportunity to get this right. And this, looking at the ways that we use technology to help move people from point A to point B, depending on the focus, is really important. The other piece that's happening literally today is the housing element of our comprehensive plan that discusses the type of infrastructure recommendations or considerations in our housing element that are impacted by the way people get around. So in that classification, there is the TOD, which is more emphasis that is very indicative of what it would be highly bus or other method in a fixed guideway, whatever investment. Then there's bus emphasis corridor, which I didn't realize there was a differentiation between the two. And then there's other methods. This data, as it's collected, and as we choose to invest our transportation assets, would be, in my opinion, intricately, interspersed or interlaced with our comprehensive planning strategy on how we grow and how we develop mobility options within a community. I'm hoping that in the process of doing this kinds of analysis, that it would be much easier to identify those TOD zones, those bus emphasis zones, so that we could actually incorporate that in our land policy as it pertains to commercial and residential development, because we are not doing that as well as we need to, given we're in a serious housing crisis right now. But we also have a transportation crisis too, some not as urgent, but it is a problem. So I'm curious if the result of this kind of work could also include identification of TOD or bus emphasis corridors that would be recommended for land policy or housing policy as part of our overall comprehensive plan. Because right now, we don't have anything identified, as best I can tell, other than where Hart could afford to run a route. And that seems to have a cart before the horse kind of a situation. But definitely doesn't give the data that's necessary to support the investment in infrastructure, which ultimately is decided on our TIP. So it does, not having those corridors supported with data in terms of why are we investing, smart technology in a certain area, and yet we're not considering that area a TOD zone or a bus emphasis zone, or making recommendations for housing policies in those areas. And I know that's really complex, but they are based on the REACH conference I went to last Friday, where we're talking about resilient communities and resiliency and smart planning and equity. The key element of that consensus by the leaders in the region were that transportation and housing policy is absolutely linked if we're going to build resilient communities. And this is a great way of addressing it in terms of technologies, but I think there's other elements that need to be included in the process.
Yeah, Commissioner, you're absolutely right. And I think the way that we can add value to that conversation is by working with the land use planners to educate
Get closer,
them about,
please. Get closer. There you
to
go.
educate them about the types of technologies that are needed in the land context or the land use context of transit-oriented development patterns. So specifically regarding transit stations, those are more or less the epicenter of where you need transfer fare payment stations. You need apps to reserve micromobility to connect you to that first and last mile. You need security outside of transit stations. All of that technology would be centered in like a locus of the transit station. So we hope to bring that to the attention of the folks working on the TOD plan, and we actually have had conversations with them already at some meetings.
Thank you very much for that answer. The other element that I don't necessarily see, and it's probably here, but I don't see it in this particular presentation. You know, when those of us that sit on land use and other committees, when we're addressing the NIMBY effect of I don't want to develop there because there's too much traffic, you know, is where we start, you know, hitting literally the rubber meets the road. In this technology, would there be a better measurement of level of service and congestion information in order to then identify TOD and bus emphasis corridor possibilities? So, for example, in the workshop today, Bloomingdale is considered a bus emphasis corridor. Or, no, I think it's actually not a bus emphasis corridor. And yet, we're getting continual pushback on any density in that area because the road is failing at a very, very high rate. And yet, it's not identified as either a TOD or a bus emphasis corridor. So I'm trying to understand, where's the disconnect? And is it the disconnect in the resources ability to service that area? Or is it that we just don't have the data to support that would be a functional route, given the amount of traffic and where it's going and where it's coming from?
That's a really complex question, a good one, certainly. That's actually not one of the recommendations that are included in this plan, because that wasn't really something that we scoped into the Smart Cities Mobility Plan. What I can say is that my team is working on a study right now with Hillsborough County staff to revise some of the level of service standards. We're developing a data and analytical tool that'll help us predict travel time reliability into the future, and that's going to be one of the major inputs in whichever LOS methodology we settle on. So we're working on that right now. We're taking that challenge pretty seriously, but it's not really part of the Smart Cities Mobility Plan.
So how are you measuring equity in this process when I don't end up with a corridor that's identified for affordable housing because of the need to connect to transit, but it's not in the, I mean, how are you measuring it in this particular project?
For the Smart Cities projects that are submitted to us, the way that we take a look at equity is whether or not they were flagged as potentially problematic by members of the community. So we don't have a very strong quantitative methodology for determining whether or not a specific technology facilitates inequity. The way that we were kind of informed about these issues is just by having the conversations, like going out to the Great American Teach-In, talking with staff, the results of the survey. It was not exactly consensus, but there were definitely some technologies that came up again and again as potentially problematic. The red light running cameras, facial recognition technology, they use that to expedite like hopping on a bus at a transit station. I'm trying to think of some others. I think mobile fares, like anything that relates to payment systems, was also flagged. So we have a short list of projects that are potentially problematic. We're not able to give our stamp and say, these are inequitable, but we want to call it to the attention of the agencies before they deploy any of those technologies to say, hey, you might have to speak to the public before you think about constructing this, because not everyone's going to be happy.
Okay, I'm just want to make sure that this effort is in line with the MPOs or TPOs equity policy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've obviously established one, and looking at it from that lens, I think, is critically important in order to make sure that we're investing in an equitable manner in our communities. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, we definitely agree with you. As Lee stated, when we originally scoped this plan, we didn't know that we were going to need a public engagement task. I had a conversation with Commissioner Smith, and I made a commitment to her that we would go out to the public and ask for their thoughts on the technologies, and that's one of the reasons why this dragged out for almost 2 years, because we wanted to do the best job we could.
So for the record, I'm going to ask that when you're thinking about where this goes forward, that how housing policy interfaces with the investment of smart technology for mobility plays a part in this, with recommendations on identifying the various different levels of transit, whether it's TOD, bus emphasis, or otherwise, because I think that would be a very equitable way of addressing our tip list, our tip priorities, as long as that, you know, when that is available for discernment. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith? Thank you. I was going to ask about your, mentioning that some communities liked some technologies and some didn't. But I heard now the red light camera and facial recognition is some like and some don't. Anything else that is coming up as something that, there's mixed feelings about one way or the other?
Lee is telling me about City of Tampa is managing a mobility as a service pilot program. That is a navigation app that allows you to make payments and reserve transportation modes. So with one app, you would be able to book a fare to hop on a bus, reserve a scooter. There's quite a bit of apprehension about those technologies because of the payment information. It stores your credit card info. So that's another one that was flagged as polarizing. Many of them are related to the payment issue, and the City of Tampa is well aware of that. They're trying to work through those issues, but public perception always comes into play.
Thank you. For my part, I love the Park Mobile app. I just love it. But what gives me peace of mind about the payment question is I can pay through PayPal. And I figure, hey, if PayPal's data ever gets exposed, we're all in trouble, rather than this one, and this one. Thank you. Very interesting. Commissioner Overman, we really, really do need, it's larger than this, of course, but we really do need to figure out ways to do transit-oriented development, smart growth, affordable housing, linked to where are we putting transit, absolutely. And I think the disconnect, frankly, has been political in the past, that former administrations and boards have been moved to to prioritize their transportation, some road project where some developer owns the land to put the development, and then the density that would be great for affordable housing is going somewhere where we don't have transit because that benefits some developers. So we've had that tail wagging the dog in their political pressure until now. But I am optimistic that we now have a board and an administration, and our planners understand that we are back to the original goals and are counting on our planners to work together in the way that Mr. Wong was just talking about, planners working with transportation planners. We just had a really model example of some of that yesterday with the school district working with a developer, a home builder, working very closely with the community right on the heels of the Waimama Community Plan to come up with a development that was win-win-win for everybody. And we just are going to need to be building on that and doing the same thing with smart growth, affordable housing, transit-oriented development. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess to that point, I would just say, a huge thing is that we are the most underfunded transit system in the nation, bar none, not by a little bit, but by an enormous amount. Anyplace else, it would be considered a crisis. We would have been in a crisis a decade ago. It's just shockingly underfunded, and so there is not possibilities. As we know, there's 30 routes, 19 of them are hourly, and there's no end in sight to that right now. So that's one of the things, but I also think that the transit route planning has to be, in fact, it's federally mandated under, if you want to get any federal funding, under your transit agency, your 5307 agency, and it's all prescribed in terms of the kinds of studies that are required, projections and everything in terms of ridership and ridership potential and service and all that. You could do it without that if you wanted to fund it yourself, but we're obviously not very good at that. And no one else is. So, so I think that is another separate kind of process that happens outside this. Not to say that it's, in fact, I think it's probably very closely related to the TOD that you have. But I usually think, too, of a lot of the failure in this, as I see it right now, even as starts, like in the city, is like even providing reasonable bus stops at any place where there are our most utilized routes. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments.
Just have a quick follow-up. The good news is this will capture data that will help take the politics not completely out of the equation, but it'll reduce the politics because it'll show where the demand is, it'll show traffic, it'll be able to identify where those things go so that we can use data for making decisions on how possibly other policies change in terms of whether it's funding, whether it's housing policy, or whether it's land use. So thank you very much for your report.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I guess we'll move to the next item on our agenda, public participation.
Chair,
Yes.
We are bringing this forward as an action item. If
Oh.
you care to make a motion.
Sorry, that's true. It says
No problem.
action item right here. So with that, do we have a motion?
Motion to, accept the report?
Approve or accept, your choice.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith. Do we have a second?
I'll second it with a record of the comments that were recorded today for potential focus on equity. So thank you.
Okay, and we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Overman. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Kemp?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Commissioner Overman?
Yes.
Bob Frey?
Yes.
Charles Klug?
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And with that, we will move to the next item on our agenda, Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Report. David Franklin, TPO staff.
Good morning. I'm Davita Franklin.
I'm sorry. Davita Franklin.
Oh, that's fine. I'm Davita Franklin, the Community Relations Coordinator for the TPO, and I'm presenting to you the Measures of Effectiveness Report, which helps drive our public participation plan. And this report covers 2020 and 21. Next slide, please. So why are we focusing on public participation? Well, it provides opportunities for involvement, assures inclusivity of our constituencies, and requires responsiveness, creativity, and flexibility while maximizing exposure and minimizing costs. And so why this report? Well, it evaluates public engagement, recommends improvements, and demonstrates an interest in public input. And so what this report looks at is visibility and productivity, which basically is what we produce, participation opportunities, which are options that the public has to interact with us, and public interest and feedback, which is feedback that we collect from the public, as well as input results, which is how the feedback is used to help make recommendations in our studies and our projects. And so I'm going to take a look at just a snapshot of each of these sections of the report, but the report does go in more depth in these sections here. So for visibility and productivity, you just have a snapshot here of a couple of ways that we've been visible to the public. And so we have the newsletters, meeting packets, and published reports since 2010. So that's 2,097. And then for brochures, maps, and flyers, also since 2010, we've produced 24,900. For news article appearances, we have 1,232, and that's for the 2-year period. And then since we began our YouTube account, we have had, since 2017, 2,882 views. And those are for our meetings and our hearings of our committees and the board. So here's a snapshot of how we've been quite visible. So for the sample on the left, you have our director, Beth Alden, who is in this situation participating in a meeting virtually. And we have moved on to a hybrid environment where people can participate in person or virtually. And this allows for us to reach more members of the public by giving them more options for participation. And then on the right side, we have a snapshot of outreach for the Nondiscrimination Plan. And so there you see there are 3 members of our staff who were out in the public, and they actually went door to door canvassing folks for input for the Nondiscrimination Plan. We also had a storytelling forum, as well as some outreach that we did to small groups in the community and different organizations. So if we move to the next slide, for participation opportunities, this is a chart here that shows all of the meetings that we had during 2020 and 21, as well as all of the folks that attended these meetings and all the public comments that we had during those meetings. But if we move on to the next slide, we'll see just another snapshot here. So the report, again, does go more in depth with these numbers, but you'll see that in total, we had 3,916 board and committee meeting participants. And we also had 56 speakers at the Transportation Improvement Program hearing in 2020 and 21. And then we had 940 individuals who received an emailed agenda, as well as 20% of the events that we either hosted or participated were in environmental justice areas. So for public interest and feedback, we have 4 examples here where we were able to get information from the public. So for the Nondiscrimination Plan, again, that is a stellar example of folks who were able to engage with us and give them their opinions. And for the, and again, I mentioned the examples of how we did that. So that was through small focus groups, engaging the public through door-to-door canvassing, and also doing outreach to different community organizations. So for the Sheldon Road Corridor Technical Study, that one focused on 8 high injury network corridors. And what we did is we went out to the communities around those 8 corridors and got feedback that helped inform the study. For the annual evaluation of the Community Transportation Coordinator, that's the Sunshine Line. And with that one, we actually received over 1,300 responses via surveys that were mailed out to individuals, and that was during 2020 and 21. And then for the Transportation Improvement Program. So with that one, we did have a few folks during the 2021 public hearing that did have concerns about the downtown interchange. And so as a result of some information that's in the report that the Citizens Advisory Committee, and you did hear Mr. Fernandez earlier, the report does say that there were some challenges. However, the report does not fully state the challenges that the community presented in terms of not just us getting more feedback from them, but also in terms of the different aspects of the project being fully presented in a way where the community understood them. So moving forward, the report will add that information so that way we can fully represent some of those challenges. And then for public input, so we have 2 examples here. On the left side, you have a map of the Plant City circulator concept or concept route, and that would be a map that the community actually responded during a survey and in small focus groups, and they said, hey, we like this route more than some other options that were presented. So as a result, the TPO did recommend in this study, which is the Plant City Transit Feasibility Study, that Plant City and HART identify a funding source for a potential circulator, as well as consider some more research into the options. And then on the right side, we have the Safe Access to Parks pilot study. And that study, we actually went out to 3 different parks. We went out to Copeland Park, Sulphur Springs, and the Upper Tampa Bay Trail. And we asked people, how can you feel safer going to your park locations and also traveling through them? And we got a few responses. Some folks said they'd rather see wider paths or trails. Some other folks would want some more safety paint identifiers at the head of the trail or a path, or to delineate where a path ends and the street begins. And so because of that, we did include those recommendations in that study. And so here, we actually have some successes that we'd like to share with you. So in the upper right-hand corner, those are kids of the FLIP Junior Program, Future Leaders in Planning. We had a partnership with the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, and through that partnership, we were able to serve kids in underserved communities that were in elementary and middle school. And so because of that particular engagement, these kids were able to engage their family and community members and just be able to be more aware of the transportation planning process, as well as have a voice that historically they haven't had in the past. And on the upper right, you see the Morning of Remembrance. That is a Vision Zero event that we help host annually. And this particular one here, this was last year, 2021, on Bruce B. Downs. And it's just to raise awareness in the community of the traffic fatalities that unfortunately occur within Hillsborough County. And on the lower left, we have the Garden Steps project, and that is that's in partnership with the Coalition of Community Gardens. And on the right, you have the Gulf Coast Safe Streets Hybrid Summit. We have hosted that for 2 years, and last year, we hosted some bike ride tours to, again, bring awareness to bicycle safety. And so these are, again, successes that we've had where we've partnered with other organizations. So the last area would be input results. And so what we do is we work off of the 2020 report recommendations to see how we did in the areas that report recommended. And then we make recommendations for the future years. So for 2020, that report recommended to increase citizen engagement in environmental justice areas, to use short videos to inform. It also recommended flexibility in public plan requirements, as well as seeking feedback on public engagement strategies. And so the next slide shows a grid of these recommendations and how good we did. So for the recommendation to better engage environmental justice areas, Again, the 2020 Non-Discrimination and Equity Plan update was a great example of outreach to the community, specifically in environmental justice areas. And then the Flip Junior Ambassadors Program, as I mentioned before, we partnered with the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, and not only were we present in Tampa Heights, but we also were able to reach kids in the Palm River area, as well as Town and Country and Waimama. And then for short videos, we sponsor some videos through 83 Degrees videos, as well as some in-house 1 Minute Matters videos. And those are shorts where we present some educational material, such as information on transit-oriented development. To be more flexible, again, we had a virtual engagement, which has now evolved into hybrid engagement. And then to get more feedback, we had our feedback, we had some success with feedback through the Transportation Improvement Program Amendment Pilot. So as you may know, the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, has sometimes amendments that are presented through different planning partners throughout the year. Well, this past year, in 2021, we actually put out a more robust effort to get community feedback, which included putting out road signs, posting of posts on Facebook and on Twitter, as well as putting out press releases and or news articles. And we also, let me see here, because there were different, a dedicated webpage. So we had these different things, whereas before we just had a dedicated webpage and maybe an announcement in our newsletter. So for the 2022 report recommendations, before I continue, I do want to mention that the committee responses were that the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Livable Roadways Committee, and the Technical Advisory Committee all approved the report. I did mention before the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I do want to just mention again that they did approve the report, but under the condition that the report includes more information about the challenges over the past 2 years in regards to outreach and information shared about the downtown interchange. So this report recommends that we increase our digital and social media tools to increase engagement. And the way that we're going to do that is, you see before you TikTok. That's a way for us to reach younger generations. We do have a great example. The city of Tampa has a great TikTok posting strategy where several times a day they have some TikTok videos that go up. So again, we're going to follow that lead and create our own path of success in that means, as well as by using Nextdoor and posting a more variety of videos on Facebook. YouTube, besides our committee meetings and our board meetings. And then we're also going to institutionalize the proactive outreach for the TIP amendment. So I mentioned all of the ways that we were able to present outreach to the community for the TIP amendments. And so now we're going to make that formal by making that a recommendation in our public participation plan. And then we're going to provide more clarity about the TPO's role and responsibilities in the transportation planning process. So here's an example of what a social media post could look like, and then it could be followed by an infographic or a short video that basically says, hey, we're your TPO, but did you know? And then we'll talk about some of the ways that we make recommendations for funding or for projects. And then we're also going to use focus groups more. So again, I keep saying it over and over again, but the 2021 Non-Discrimination and Equity Plan update was a great example of how we were able to go out into the community. And one of the success stories that we have from that outreach is the ability to go out and reach groups in small sizes. So instead of having just a survey, which we did do, we actually went out and were able to get responses from the community where they gave us answers where they just didn't check off a box. They gave us things that are concerns where it wasn't just black and white. And so because of that, for the next 2 years and beyond, we will go out and meet the community where they are and hold focus groups. And so what that's going to do is our last recommendation here, which is to build a culture of awareness. So one of the things that we realized even in Flip Junior is that there are a lot of people in the community that just don't know who we are or what we do. And so we do a great job in our social media outreach, and we also do a great job with our newsletter articles, but we're going to do a better job at going out to where the people are, at partnering with different organizations. And so because of that, especially to assure that these organizations can be our voice, we're going to partner with faith-based organizations for all of our studies and our projects, as well as other small organizations. And the reason why is because they just have a larger base. So, you know, we're a team of so many, but we can partner with a team of greater numbers to make sure that that happens. And that is it. So I do thank you, and our recommendation today is to approve the Measures of Effectiveness Report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say, it's 9:34, and we do have the tip coming up, and, we want to leave some time for that. So if we could maybe respond to this quickly, or just be aware of that.
Very quickly, just 5 stars on the report, as well as, this is one of our TPO strengths, I think, is public outreach and information. And I applaud your efforts to keep on looking for creative strategies and different ways of doing things. I do see you on social media and in the newsletters and everything, and agree that the City of Tampa's social media strategy is an excellent example, partly because they've got the funds there to really have a lot of people working on it constantly, but also they have a very clever voice a lot of times in their social media outreach, and that I think helps things get shared. But compliments to you and the team, and with that, I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith. Do we have a
Second.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that the consideration of the CAC, as you said, that they passed it, but that there was concern about more attention to the kinds of things that were done in the last 2 years with regards to the TDI. So I'm assuming that will be, I would say that would, I'd like to have that noted, at least by me. I know we don't have much time for a discussion. And the other thing, and it's great, Nextdoor, TikTok, I think those are really important. I'm wondering about Reddit, because there's a lot of kinds of conversation that would be like TPO types of discussion that I see on Reddit that might be significant. And I know we're already overwhelmed by all these different possibilities, and I would think TikTok would be the strongest, but there's kind of some more serious discussions about this kind of thing on Reddit, so I would just note that, because also it's a younger generation. And my last comment would just be this, is that, and I've mentioned this to Ms. Alden over time, I sometimes feel, and this is maybe not with this, but I feel it's a very unhelpful thing when we have outreach or do projects or planning around things that we have no idea of how it could be funded, like not in any immediate future or anything, because I know that we've had forums and hundreds of people have attended and think that somehow this project will be coming tomorrow, and it's not anywhere. We don't even have any funding, and I feel like that makes people disturbed, feeling they just don't believe in government anymore, and they don't believe, it puts false expectations out. It's like, oh, we're going to build this community center that's a Taj Mahal or something, and then there's no plans for it and whatever, and people get disappointed and disturbed. So I just want to say that here, because I think that doesn't help our credibility when we do have things that are important and can possibly be on the horizon for real funding. So with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Overman. If we could do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Kemp,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Commissioner Overman,
Yes.
Bob Frey,
Yes.
Charles Klug.
Yes.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And we will move on. We have, this is going to have to be, it's 9:38. The Transportation Improvement Program Tip Priorities Update. Johnny Wong.
Yeah, thank you, Policy. Johnny Wong, TPO staff again. This time I'm going to present you with an update to the TIP. We have put together a preliminary draft, which is very close to what you will see during next month's public hearing. Gina, would you mind clicking forward a few slides? Policy members, because you've seen almost an exact replica of this presentation in previous years, I'm going to basically skip through all of section 1. I only want to call attention to, Gina, can you skip through one more slide, please? Maybe two more. It's the one with the flow chart on it. There you go. I only want to call attention to this slide because this year we revised the TIP prioritization methodology, and that comes into effect for state of good repair projects and Vision Zero projects mostly. We made a couple changes, and I'm going to explain exactly what those are when we get to later slides, but I just want you to be prepared for that because the methodology has changed. We think that it's improved the ranking system. Gina, can you skip to section 2, please? Yeah, there you go. Next slide. So I'm going to go through tables 1 and 2. As you all know, these are the two tables of the TIP that our team spends the most time on. Table 1 is a list of priorities that have received some construction funding. So for all intents and purposes, these projects are underway, and the only reason why we remove projects from this list is because they have been completed. Some of the projects that were completed in this year and can effectively graduate off the list are HART's CAT-AVL system, that's vehicle tracking software that allows the transit agency to better predict the arrival and departure times of the buses. There's another update that we didn't receive in time to hit the policy mail out, but City of Tampa contacted us and let us know that approximately 5 of their projects are now completed. So in the version that you see next month, you'll see that Green Artery Phase 2B is complete. Some other projects that are associated with the Riverwalk, and some sections that are funded with the RAISE grant as well. We added, one more thing to say about that slide. We added quite a few projects this year, so they have received construction funding, and they are going to break ground on these in the near future. They are Green Spine Phase 2B, a safety project on Dale Mabry from Mango to Pearl Ave, another safety project on Fowler from I-275 to I-75, Twigs from Ashley to Nebraska, a Selman Greenway trailheads being constructed between 17th and 19th. Cross Bay Ferry operational funds have been added. The West Shore interchange, the downtown interchange were subjects of TIP amendments back in October, so those are underway. And I-275 from MLK to Hillsborough. Next slide, please. Table 2 is the table that my team spends the most time on because we solicit projects from all the local governments and transit agencies, and we seek the data out to prioritize them based on our methodology. So as I mentioned, the state of good repair methodology was tweaked a little bit this year. We have added quantitative metric to evaluate resiliency projects, which we did not have in the past. So now if we receive a resiliency project, a good example would be the one at the very bottom of this slide, Bayshore Boulevard seawall reconstruction. If the resiliency project is located in an area that is highly vulnerable and has high criticality, it gets prioritized on the list. Others that are not highly vulnerable or highly critical can fall lower down on the list. The additions to Table 2 State of Good Repair this year, the projects seeking funding are HART bus replacements, HART bus maintenance midlife overhaul, bus stop capital repairs, T-bar to van pool operations, and as I mentioned, the City of Tampa submitted Bayshore Boulevard seawall reconstruction. Next slide, please. Certainly in the amount of time that I have been managing the TIP, we have never received quite as many safety projects in 1 year. You see that this slide is entirely populated. So we had to tweak the Vision Zero methodology a little bit to make sure that we're prioritizing projects based on construction readiness. We figured that you would have the preference to move projects ready that will have an impact in the immediate future rather than prioritizing planning studies or exploratory studies. So if the agency is requesting funding for construction, those projects are automatically awarded a spot toward the top. Following that, projects seeking design and construction, then PD&E, then planning studies, and if a phase wasn't identified, those fall all the way to the bottom of the Vision Zero. So after we sort based on construction readiness, we're then looking at the crash performance. And the crash performance methodology or metric is fatalities and serious injuries per mile. And then after that, if there are two projects which are tied, for example, both are ready for construction, both have a crash performance of about 6 per mile, we break the tie based on whichever project will have an impact on an environmental justice community. So the greater proportion of the project that falls in a disadvantaged community, that gets the bump. The projects that we added to the list this year are Hillsborough Ave, 2 intersection projects on Hillsborough Ave, one at Sawyer Road and the other at Town and Country Boulevard, Lois Ave from Cleveland to Boy Scout Boulevard, a few intersection projects on US 301, one at Palm River Road, another at Harney, Stacy, and McIntosh, one on Mango Road from MLK to US 92, one on Lynn Turner Road from Ehrlich to Gunn Highway, 78th Street from Causeway Boulevard to Palm River, North 15th from Fowler to Fletcher, Fletcher from Armenia to Nebraska, another intersection project on 301, this one's at Sims, CR 39 at Lithia Pinecrest, a complete street project on Habana from MLK to Hillsboro, Azeel Street from Dale Mabry to Armenia, Bird Street from Florida to Nebraska, 15th Street from Lake Ave to Palm, Manhattan from Gandy to Euclid, Sheldon from Hillsboro to Waters, and McDill from Beta Bay to Kennedy. Next slide, please. Smart cities, as we just discussed, we devised an entirely new prioritization matrix to award tech projects and allow them a chance to compete for funds. We did receive some submissions this year, one from the City of Tampa for signal replacements downtown, as well as a bridge control project. Those two go together. HART initially requested a fiber optic ring. We have since learned that that's actually just an assessment, so that one's going to come off table 2. Next time you see that, that one will be deleted. And several signal replacements on county roads that run through the City of Tampa. Two are on Cypress, one at Armenia, one at Howard, one on Henderson at San Rafael and Lois, one at Habana and Columbus, one on Himes at Gandy, 2 on Manhattan, one at El Prado, one at Beta Bay, and then Church at Beta Bay. Next slide, please. Real choices when not driving. The methodology was tweaked a little bit as a result of us receiving so many safety project submissions. So the way that we changed the real choices when not driving methodology this year is, if we received a safety project that had fewer than 3 crashes per mile, we assume that that project will have benefits for better connecting the network. It will have safety benefits, but it's not a high crash location. So any project scoring fewer than 3 got bumped over to real choices when not driving. Still possible for it to get funding, but recognizing that those are not the projects that will have the biggest impact on safety. So the new projects are one on 109th Ave from Nebraska to 30th, Ashley Drive from Tyler to Laurel Street, Dale Mabry at Spruce, Hannah Ave from Nebraska to 40th, 14th Street from Columbus to I-4, Main Street from Armenia to North Boulevard, Waters at Florida Mining Boulevard, Brush Street from Whiting to Kennedy as part of the Water Street development. And the DOT requested that we add a line item They're wrapping up an inventory of sidewalk gaps on segments of State Road. They have not passed us locations, but I've heard that there are many. So we included that line item so that they can seek funding as they identify which gaps they want to fill. Next slide, please. And lastly, major investments for economic growth. As you know, these are projects that add capacity. They could be fixed guideway transit, widening, also projects that are prohibitively expensive for us to fund with SU dollars. So some of the projects that we added to the list this year are not capacity. Broreen Street Bridge Rehab is an expensive project. It would not be able to be funded in state of good repair, so we moved it to major investments. Cass Street Bridge Repair is basically the same situation. Cross Bay Ferry Service, Hart has won an FTA grant to purchase a boat for the ferry service, so we're adding that here. A safety project on 30th Street from Yukon to Fowler, that's a major safety project, well beyond the $5 million cap. And then Inner Bay Boulevard from West Shore to Bay Shore is another safety project, also somewhat expensive. Next slide, please. I actually want to call attention to a few of the projects on the safety list because we'd really like for the policy members to weigh in. We actually need your help making a decision about which projects to recommend for funding in this new tip. Next slide, please. Can you skip ahead one more, please? Maybe I didn't include it in this slide, so I'll just refer to the handout. So we are we're coordinating with Hillsborough County staff right now. They have requested some funding for preliminary engineering for 3 safety projects. In the handout, they are number 20 on the Vision Zero list, 78th Street from Causeway Boulevard, number 21, North 15th from Fowler Ave to Fletcher Ave, and number 23, Fletcher Ave from Armenia to Nebraska. Yes, number 20 on the Vision Zero Table 2, 78th Street from Causeway Boulevard, it's toward the bottom, and number 21, North 15th from Fowler to Fletcher, and then number 23 on the following page, Fletcher from Armenia Ave to Nebraska. What we are trying to do with the TIP priority list this year, as I've mentioned, is award projects that are shovel-ready. We want to see projects get constructed soon so that we can bring down some of those crash numbers. As you know, they've been exceedingly high over the past few years. So our response is that we want to fund safety projects that are able to be implemented in a short timeline, and most of those projects are quick fix treatments. Hillsborough County is requesting preliminary engineering funds to explore larger projects. So TPO staff collaborated with the county on these studies. We have a list of improvements that we would like to move forward, but the county is asking for money to continue exploring larger scale improvements. We're considering these to be planning studies. What we would like to do is to fund the amounts shown in red, $332,000 for 78th Street, $335 for North 15th, and $225 for Fletcher Ave to get these projects moving. And so what we're presenting to you and why we're seeking guidance is because we would like to know if your preference is to continue awarding money to do exploratory studies on larger scale, longer term improvements, or to award the amounts listed in red now so that we can begin work on quick fix safety improvements. I'm going to pose that to the committee because that's the only question we need guidance on. The rest of the steps the rest of the slides are just next steps that we are circulating this presentation to committees and that the public hearing is on June 8th.
And Madam Chair, the full slide deck is available with a link in the agenda packet. It is also linked on the calendar page for today's meeting.
Thank you. And that concludes your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And are there comments? Anyone wish to speak to this? Commissioner Smith.
Just quickly, with regard to your question about guidance for long-term or short-term, I think we have to proceed this year under the assumption that we have what we have, but later, if it turns out we have the funding source of the surtax, then we'll be able to have a funding source to bond out over longer terms. But off the top of my head, in answer to your question, our congestion problems, our Vision Zero problems are so severe right now that whatever quick fix we can do with whatever money we have for the current term is what I would think would be important, while we cross our fingers and hope that we have some more funding source and matching funds to use for federal dollars for bigger, longer-term projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment on that? I would just agree. With that, I think, do we, no more further discussion? We don't have to take a vote on this, or, okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you. So what we'll do then is conclude. We have old and new business. Anyone? Okay, and with that, we will be adjourned. And we have just 6 minutes till the meeting at 10 o'clock.
Hello, Mr. Anthony Mantieri. I see that we have you on the line. Can you confirm that you can hear us? This is HTV.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please keep your line muted until the chair calls your name, and then you'll have your chance to speak.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hello, Mauricio. I see that you just signed in. Can you confirm that you can hear us?
Yes, Mauricio Rosa.
Thank you very much. Just keep yourself muted until
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this May 11th meeting of the TPO Board. Before we begin this morning, let's all rise together and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have a memorandum here from Commissioner Gwen Myers. She apologizes that due to an unforeseen event, she is unable to attend today's meeting, and she asked that this letter be read into the record. At this time, I'm going to ask for a roll call and a declaration of quorum, and then after that, just a voice vote of consent for remote member participation, because I believe that School Board Member Vaughn and Ms. LeGrand from Hart are participating remotely this morning.
Commissioner Cohen?
Here.
Commissioner Kemp?
Here.
Commissioner Overman?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Councilman Maniscalco has been excused. Mayor Ross?
Here.
Commissioner Kilton?
Here.
Joe Lopano?
Here.
Adelie LeGrand?
Here.
Greg Slater?
Here.
Charles Klug?
Here.
Planning Commissioner Powell?
Here.
School Board Member Vaughn?
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum, and if you'd like to call for that vote of consent.
Great, and if everyone would just engage in a voice vote of consent for remote member participation, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Well, welcome to the two of you that are on virtually. At this time, we are going to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of our April 13th, 2022 meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion from Councilman Citro, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We're going to now move on to public comment. We have 30 minutes reserved for public comment, with up to 3 minutes per speaker. There are at least 6 people that are signed up for public comment this morning. The first of those is Rick Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
I can.
All right. Again, I appreciate your courtesy. Rick Fernandez out of Tampa Heights. I'm on the board of the Civic Association and the Transpo Committee Chair, also Vice Chair of your CAC. My written submissions are incorporated by reference, as are my comments at today's Policy Committee meeting. First, with reference to the Public Participation Plan, or PPP Effectiveness Report, it's on your consent agenda. I have asked that this document be removed from the consent agenda and returned to the authors with instruction to provide analysis of the PPP process related to the DTI, Tampa Heights, FDOT, TPO staff, and board. Concerns include, but are not limited to, the issue of retention wall intrusion along the Tampa Heights eastern boundary. I would note that the CAC has voted to approve the PPP report with a caveat, quote, the report needs to acknowledge the challenges over the last 2 years in communicating with the public about the design of the downtown interchange, close quote. This request was made a week ago at the CAC, and there's been no effort that I'm aware of to supplement the report to date. Without discussion of this issue, the report is flawed and, in my opinion, not deserving of consent agenda treatment. Second, the annual TIP public hearing has been noticed for June 8th. The CAC has already begun review of the TIP preliminary draft. Please note that the 3 lane movements making up the DTI quick fix are now in Table 1, and the CAC has recommended 2 of these lane movements be removed because of their impact in Tampa Heights. Also, the 3rd lane movement, westbound 4 to northbound 275, was the subject of a motion to strike last year made by a TPO board member. I suggest that motion is ripe for a revisit this year. If the representatives who ran on promises to fight expansion of the interstate and the urban core of Tampa honor their commitments, this wrong-headed project can finally be stopped this year. The next 30 days are critical. Third, there's the matter of dedicated bus lanes on Florida Avenue and Tampa Street. We understand FDOT is looking for a lane repurposing request from HART. We ask that this step be taken and that the dedicated lanes be included in the project descriptions for this year's TIP in Table 1. Currently, they are not there to be found, and I would note FPN numbers 511-7 and 511-8, both of those line items in Table 1. That's my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fernandez. Our next speaker is Anthony Mangieri.
Hi, good morning. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Good morning, we can hear you.
Outstanding, thank you. Anthony Mangieri, lifelong resident of Hillsborough County, particularly in the northwest of the county. Just here as a concerned citizen, first time speaking to the committee, so I'll just make this very brief. As we've seen in all of Hillsborough County, most of west coast of Florida, explosive growth has put challenges on our local infrastructure. What we're seeing, particularly in northwest Hillsborough County, primarily my focus is Van Dyke Road between Dale Mabry and the Suncoast Parkway. We've seen explosive growth and land use changes that have driven up traffic volume to the point of needing additional lanes to provide for life safety for the hospital that was built, approximately 400 rooms, local fire station, and then also one of the main evacuation routes for hurricane evacuation out of Pasco County and the Keystone area. There is currently a project on the books. I believe it was initiated or at least explored in 2014 with some funding and current land acquisition for Van Dyke Road for the expansion. That project has been continually delayed to now, I believe, 2027, where the initial completion was scheduled for 2024. As you can imagine, this is creating a lot of life safety issues on that road. And if you look at the accident data from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, you will see that there's been many, many issues and accidents that have occurred on that very short stretch of road. What we're looking for, and we've met with many of the churches, both private and public sector individuals, is just some temporary reasonable measures until that project can be fully funded and built to just provide for initial safety, including some sidewalks, a designated third lane, light timing, and even a temporary light. So all I'm asking for from the board is a further review of that current project, the timing, and then also some consideration from traffic engineering to look at other temporary measures that could help with the life safety issues that are there today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lena Young Green.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you once again for allowing us to be able to address you at your board meeting. We continue to request your assistance with making sure our community and in Tampa Heights and the surrounding neighborhoods are considered as high priority as you all make decisions about transportation in our community. You've heard us repeatedly ask about and discuss about the impact of the interstates in our urban core. We are back again with the same request as you prepare to look at TPI for our next month's meeting. We want to ask that you continue to consider the impact of these ever-extending roads and interstate lanes in our neighborhoods. It impacts us environmentally, it impacts us socially, it impacts our health, and we believe that we are as important as those who our plans are for their transportation. I would like to request that you support Rick Fernandez's presentation to you, and look forward to being there for next month's meeting. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Candace Savitz?
Candace has not signed into the meeting.
All right. Mauricio Rosas?
Hello, this is Mauricio.
Okay, good morning. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Thank you for letting us speak today. First, I want to emphasize what was said earlier in the policy meeting about land use. We need land use correction because if we continue the way we are here within Hillsborough County alone, we won't have reasonable mass transit for the outer counties if we continue to use land the way we do. So please take that into consideration. Then also, I've been following Green Artery, and there are two segments, Segment D and Segment E. They appear to have been funded, thanks to staff who has been helping me with this, but we have no record for construction date. And these projects are shovel-ready. I would imagine that we would want to put this forward. So please also take that into consideration. Now let's go back to I-275, the underpasses. The underpasses of Osborne, Chelsea, Flora, Nebraska are not uniform to those of MLK and Hillsborough Avenue. I've checked with FDOT staff. The decision was arbitrary. All of those underpasses are constructed exactly alike. Yet we are not getting the same treatment. You go to Ybor City, you go to West Shore, and all of those look alike. You come north, they don't look alike anymore. There is no place setting. There is no, let me repeat that. There is no place making, no place making. And I have talked with some staff and some of you commissioners regarding this. People are just going to get on the road. They have no idea they're coming through. There's nothing that identifies this area of saying, okay, this is East Tampa, this is Seminole Heights. Yet when you go on to West Shore, which is not a historical area, they have a nice amenity that says, oh, you've arrived to this area. Lastly, let me just introduce quickly the East Hillsborough Renaissance Project. Like Good said, Councilman Good said, East Hillsborough Avenue looks like a dump. So myself, with my good friend Myron Griffin, with support from the East Tampa Partnership, Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association, Irwin Tech, we are reaching out. We are creating art projects. We're still nascent, but we're moving forward. So I do want you to keep this project in mind. The acronym is EHARP, so it's the East Hillsborough Renaissance Project. But more importantly, I'm interested in the fact that the underpasses are not uniform, and we also have no placemaking at any of those underpasses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Vella?
Chris has not signed into the meeting.
All right, that is all the people that I have listed for public comment. And I don't see anyone else in the room who is getting up to speak. So with that, we will move on to committee reports and advance comments, and we will start with Bill Roberts, our CAC chair. Good morning.
Sorry, my mic was not on. I'm Bill Roberts. I'm chairman of your Citizens Advisory Committee. The report of our activity over the past month is that the CAC met on May the 4th at our regular meeting. We had some public comment, and then we had 3 action items that were considered by your committee. One was the Unified Work Program. We discussed that and adopted that program, moved it on to your board with our recommendation. The committee also considered the Tpo Apportionment Plan. There was considerable discussion about this. Several of our members expressed a strong desire to have this board consist only of elected officials. Some other committee members also expressed their strong feeling that the non-elected members of this board represented views that were important to the transportation issues of our region. That said, the CAC moved and recommended the apportionment plan to your board by a vote of 10-4. At least 2 of those votes were committee members who were appointed by non-elected officials. The third action item that came before us this month was the public participation plan. You've heard some comments on that this morning. The CAC recommended that plan be approved by this board with the caveat that you've heard about earlier today, that the report needs to acknowledge the challenges over the past 2 years in communicating with the public about the design of the downtown interchange. In preparation for the upcoming TIP hearing, the CAC has actually held 2 workshops on this issue. We held a separate workshop on April the 25th for about an hour, at which we saw a very comprehensive presentation on the TIP for this year. And then following our monthly meeting on May the 4th, the CAC also had about an hour-and-a-half long workshop in which we discussed various specific items. This issue will come back before us on our meeting on June the 1st, which will precede the TIP hearing, and we'll be taking official actions on the TIP at that meeting. And finally, I would add that the committee did discuss and is aware of the standards of conduct that are coming before this board, and we certainly support your adoption of a reasonable standards of conduct for both this board as well as the committees that serve the board. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I don't see any questions at this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you.
I'm going to go on now to Davita Franklin and Beth Alden to talk about advanced comments. But before we move on to the consent agenda, I do want to ask Secretary Gwynn if he wants to make any comments related to some of the public comment that we've heard this morning. But before we do that, I think, why don't we finish the item with Ms. Franklin and Ms. Alden.
Good morning. I'm Davita Franklin, the Community Relations Coordinator for the TPO, and here's your summary of committee reports and public comments. So items pertaining to the consent agenda. The Smart Cities Mobility Plan was approved by the Intelligent Transportation System Committee, the Livable Roadways Committee, and the Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board. The Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Report for 2020-21 was approved by the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Livable Roadways Committee, and the Technical Advisory Committee. For items pertaining to the action items today, the fiscal year 2023-24 Unified Planning Work Program approval, the status update for that was given to the Intelligent Transportation Systems Committee, the Livable Roadways Committee, and the Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board. It was also approved by the Technical Advisory Committee. For the Tpo Apportionment Plan, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee asked if there was an issue with the current distribution, and they also did ask if the plan would put the city of Tampa at an advantage. They also questioned if the independent agencies should be removed since they provide value and expertise to the conversation. The Livable Roadways Committee made a motion to leave the plan as status quo, and the Technical Advisory Committee did not approve the plan. On that committee, the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority said it has a unique perspective as a transportation operator and should retain a voting seat. And the Port Authority agreed with the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority, finding the proposed plan disturbing. The Planning Commission, Hillsborough County, and the City of Tampa representatives abstained from voting since their boards have not taken a position. Regarding to your status reports, the Tampa Moves report, status update for that was given to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Now for your comments, for your summary of public comments. So these comments were received through Facebook, Twitter, and email. Ralph Greenlee and the Sundance Homeowners Association requested traffic safety improvements along US 301. Carrie Shepard commended Joshua Barber, a staff member of the TPO, for his participation on advancing equity at the AASHTO Elevating Equity Through Spatial Analysis Visualization Workshop. Lena Young, the founder of the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, requested the board vote to support no more wall intrusions in Tampa Heights, and also requested placement of the transportation tax referendum on the November ballot. Mauricio Rosas requests several things: support for funding segments F and E of the Green Artery Trail, funding for significant landscaping at the Hillsborough, Osborne, Chelsea, and MLK underpasses along the length of I-275, creating a landmark at the Hillsborough, Osborne, and MLK underpass, adding a sidewalk on the east side of the Taliaferro Road, asking FDOT to widen sidewalks at the entrance and exit ramps along the Hillsborough and MLK underpass. He also requested to route the I-275 bus rapid transit project to the Veterans Expressway and to secure funding for the Boulevard Tampa study in whole or feasibility study, as well as stopping suburban-style communities because they are not compatible with mass transit systems. Rick Fernandez, the vice chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee, did ask that HART submit a lane repurposing request to the Florida Department of Transportation to create dedicated bus lanes on Florida Avenue and Tampa Street. He requested that the TPO staff amend the measures of effectiveness report to accurately reflect the events during the June 9, 2021 TPO board meeting, and to remove the report from the TPO's board's consent agenda for today. And he asked that the TPO board support a reprieve from the Florida Department of Transportation's wall intrusion plans. You do have a few more comments that, again, appeared online. Christina Acosta of Walk Bike Tampa shared concerns about safety improvements along Southdale Mabry Highway. Mark Sharp of Soaring City IP thanked Beth Alden for participating in the Growing Resilient Communities Uptown Roundtable. Gail Reese requested that the board stays with the current status quo or adds 2 additional seats for elected officials to the apportionment plan due to the insight the current agencies provide. Chris Vela had concerns about the TPO's decisions regarding the Selman Extension, TB Next, and the I-75 express lanes, and he also projected a decrease in public participation due to the TPO's decision-making. Mike Lamarca suggested that the creation of the Sunshine he suggested the creation of a Sunshine Skyway Bridge Trail. Jeff Redding, a blind veteran, he did ask for funding to be allocated to the redesign of mid-block crosswalks, and the Environmental Protection Commission thanked the TPO for participating in the Clean Air Fest and McKay Bay cleanup on Earth Day. So please note that these attachments are referenced by referenced by the public commenters are included in the email that Cheryl Wilkinen sent to you yesterday evening, and this concludes my report. Now, Livable Roadways Committee Chair, Councilman Citro, would like to say a few words about the Livable Roadways Committee, and then Beth Alden will follow to give a summary of the policy meeting that just occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, Chairman, I am chairman of the Livable Roadways. We had a long, lengthy discussion about the makeup of this board. It was the decision, although not unanimous, to keep it status quo. We have the consensus that there are 2 members of this board that need to stay on this board, and that is Port of Tampa and the Airport Authority. They are 2 major entities, that deal with transportation in this county. We also felt that because of 2 major highways intersecting in the middle of the city of Tampa, the majority of fatalities because of accidents are in the city of Tampa, and that bicycle and pedestrian accidents in the city of Tampa, there should be another representative from the city of Tampa. So just to explain the vote and the conversation that we had at Livable Roadways. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Citro. Ms. Alden.
Thank you, sir. And just briefly, the Policy Committee reviewed 2 items that are on your consent agenda today. Those are the Smart Cities Master Plan and the Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Report, covering our activities of the last 2 years. The Policy Committee did support approving those 2 plans and reports, and also reviewed a preliminary draft of the the priority list for the Transportation Improvement Program, which you'll be looking at in your public hearing next month. There were a handful of comments from the committee members, which we'll be addressing.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions or comments for Ms. Alden? Secretary Gwynn, I know there were some items that came up in public comment that you might be able to shed some light on.
Sure, just a couple. Obviously, a lot of the comment were on things that were addressed previously and pretty much remain the same. A couple of areas that I did want to address, though. One was, I don't know that it was brought up in public comment, but I know it was brought up. There's been some complaints about dust in the area of our 275 project. I think that may be coming from some of the work. We're moving concrete, so we have gotten with our contractor. They are supposed to be using measures to control the amount of dust that occurs in the jobs, and so we'll be making sure that they follow those if they're not already, but it does appear that there maybe was some more dust than there should have been. Second item, real quickly, on the underpasses, we are still working with the community and with others in the city to try to figure out how to make the underpasses as I would say, pedestrian-friendly and welcoming as possible. I think there was some confusion early on when we were going to reconstruct that whole section of 275. We showed different types of underpasses because it was brand new construction. In the reconstruction, we are still doing a lot of improvements to the underpasses, but not all of them are going to go back all the way in a straight vertical wall. It'll be like a half vertical wall with a fencing on top. And it's still going to provide a huge amount of pedestrian space underneath all the overpasses. So we do feel like it's very reasonable, but Hillsborough and MLK will have the full vertical walls in an even wider area. Some of the input we got from recent community meetings, we're looking at how we can do things to make it more attractive, as well as the public art that the city of Tampa is going to work with us on putting in some of the areas. The last item, and I hope that I can make this I hope I can make you see that this isn't really an issue right now, but it's something I know a lot of people have talked about, and that has to do with the transit-only lanes on Florida and Tampa. So as you know, we have in the plans, hopefully at some point to have a BRT that will operate from downtown to USF, and it will have transit lanes only in that corridor. The project that we're getting ready to advertise soon, the Tampa Heights Mobility Project, has a lot of elements to it. One of the main elements, or I'd say the main element, is we had to do a lot of drainage improvements because with the road as it is now, there's no way we could put a BRT type system along those lanes because of the flooding, because of ADA deficiencies. And so we're putting in a massive box culvert underneath the road that'll fix all this drainage, will get the road to the point where we can put a bus rapid transit lane on it. We have taken a stance, and it has started in Pinellas County, that we want to set these roads up for BRT when BRT or a premium transit operation exists in that corridor. And part of the reason we did that was, as you can imagine, there are a lot of people who support transit, but there's also a lot of people who, probably even more, unfortunately, that contact us about putting a lane specifically for transit if there's only a bus an hour or a bus every half hour. In St. Pete, we have the Sunrunner and we have 34th Avenue South, which is the Skyway Marina District, and we are converting those and we're putting them in. And that was in part because PSTA committed to run a premium transit service within that corridor. It's going to be 3 to 4 years at least before we have that construction done and opened. The process to turn it into a transit lane is simple. It's just putting some delineators out on the road, signs, markings. It'll all be set up to pull the trigger. We're taking that policy in part because we want these projects to succeed. We don't want them to fail. And where we see the potential for failure is when we convert a lane too early and then the people out there that are riding it say, there's nobody in it, why did you convert it? And then the future projects we try will get that same type of response. I can commit to you that if we get a premium transit service, and it doesn't even have to be RT, it just has to be a more frequent transit service that will use those lanes, we'll convert it. It'll be all set up to convert it. So it's not a decision that has to be made today, but it's a decision we're ready to make when premium transit service gets provided in the corridor and everything will be set up.
Commissioner Kemp, and then Commissioner Overman.
And I might want to speak to that transit service, but the first thing is just, I don't know if you heard the comments by Ms. Savitz during the policy committee meeting, or someone from FDOT did, and she wasn't on this time, but she was very, she spoke for 3 minutes, and very concerned about the deconstruction of the interstate on the east side of the interstate now because of the dust, which she says is rising some 20 feet into the air, and that she had started breathing it, and she could taste the gasoline in her mouth and got very sick. She said she went to the doctors, and she was very concerned that there wasn't watering down, that it wasn't curtained off. So I know you spoke to that a little bit, but I'm just wondering if you're prepared at all now, or if you could just, again, because it was very concerning, and we decided at the policy committee that we wanted to do something to work with FDOT with regards to that.
Yes, we are going to, and I found out about that this morning, so I haven't had a chance to talk to my construction team yet. But we certainly will make sure that the contractor is held to the standards. What you expressed there, what the lady said was the condition is not supposed to happen. They're supposed to use water and other measures to keep the dust down. So when I get back to the office, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to find out what they're doing and make sure that that doesn't continue. If I find out that it does, then we'll have to figure out why that's happening, but it shouldn't happen. We do projects all over the place and don't have that kind of problem, so I just got to figure out what caused it.
Is there a screening when you do that as well, besides, or is the water the main thing?
Typically, the water will keep the dust down pretty well. If you're, we run into this too, some places you might go in a more rural area where they have open dirt and it blows around, and we have to often spray it down to try to keep it, or put sod on it sometimes if it's going to be exposed for a while. So there's various methods, and the contractor is typically given a performance measure to meet, and they can determine the best way to do that, and then we measure it. If we didn't measure it, I also need to find out why, but I can guarantee you we'll address that.
Thank you. And I may want to talk to the transit after Commissioner Overman, just for a minute.
Okay. Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Gwen. I appreciate your comments. I do have an objection when it comes to the underpasses from the downtown interchange to Hillsborough. I know I specifically indicated that the upright walls versus the sloped walls was preferred because the slope walls do not, and even with the work that's being done right now that indicates the slope wall and then an upright wall, while it does open up the sidewalk, it does not open up the perception of safety. And the community, I think, has indicated that. It just feels like we're doing a halfway job for the smaller streets that are part of our community, and in connecting the community that's been divided by the interstate, opening that all the way up is the preferred method. And I know half of the work's already done. Part of what we heard, I don't know her, Miss Lane's comments, are related to the work that's being done at that location. I've heard all of the complaints that people have done because I've experienced them. The pile driving, which are now during the day instead of the night, which is great. Thank you, thank you, thank you for hearing that loud and clear. I truly appreciated that. But there is a significant amount of dust, debris. I have seen them watering down, but it is a difficult place. It's a tight, the interstate is sitting right literally on top of people's homes, almost. And so any work that's done in that location is going to cause a problem. But I do believe that it would be important to hear when we get the comments. We have this public participation plan that is the MPO's perceptions and communication methods, and that's what we're approving in that plan. Whereas the FDOT has its communications plan, and while we're big partners, there does seem to be a difference in the approach that I think is causing some of the angst that the community is experiencing when tough decisions are being made. So I appreciate the sensitivity that FDOT has done to try and improve that relationship. But it's a good example of having the community in the Heights community specifically look for upright walls to open it up to create a perception of safety and connect the neighborhoods. And then we end up with something that, yes, we did see, here's a couple of alternatives, but the one of them is not satisfactory. And I had first discussed that prior to actually getting started on the work. The other issue is you mentioned the core transit lanes. I think it's important to recognize that, box culvert conversion on a busy road is going to be a process. So I'm wanting to ask the question of, based on that FDOT conversion to protect that lane or improve that lane to address the sidewalks and the flooding on Florida and Tampa Street, what do you perceive as the timeline? And the reason I ask that is the city's been working on Central Avenue in front of Hillsborough High School between Osborne and Hillsborough, doing similar work, replacing the stormwater so that the flooding doesn't occur. They are using box culvert. They started last, I think, October and November, and it still looks the same as it did back in October and November. One lane has been closed literally for over 6 months. And so having that experience on Florida and Tampa would be painful. So I'm curious, based on your project, what would be the opportunity or timeline for something like that to be adopted? And what penalties do you have for the contractor that would exceed the timelines on getting things done by certain dates?
Okay. And I'm going to ask Justin to come up. He probably has a better handle on the dates. Do you, Justin? But let me on a couple other things real quick. So we have penalties on all our contractors. They get hit with called liquidated damages if they don't finish on time. In other words, they have to pay us a certain amount every day, or we reduce that from their payout over time. We'll also look at putting incentives on this project, which would incentivize the contractor to work more quickly. But I'm not going to say it's not going to be painful. When you look at the amount of water that we have to remove, because there's really no drainage out there right now. And we partnered with the city. This is something that the city sees as a huge benefit to the area down there, not just our road. But we will, and I'll let Justin hear. I did want to just bring up, I don't know if this was mentioned before, but, and I understand the discussion on the underpasses. On the three that are, we had the two major arterials going through there, that was MLK and Hillsborough Avenue. They're going to have about 30-foot wide sidewalks underneath the bridges. At the other three, they're going to have about 15 feet wide. So I think it's a pretty open area, 15 feet on each side with enhanced lighting. And so I don't know that pulling those ones back to 30 would have done a whole lot more, but I understand the comments. Justin, do you know the timeline a little better?
The timeline for the Heights grant?
Yeah, for reconstructing with the box culvert.
Yeah, so the overall construction timeline's about 3 years from the time we start. Right now, we're finishing up the procurement documents because that's actually going design build so that we can begin construction sooner. The plan is to advertise that for construction in about 3 months, 4 months. We have, through the design build process, there's a few different opportunities to make some minor changes through RFP addenda. So I would say we have about 6 months to work out any modifications, but I will say that, one of the top concerns we got and one of the highest scoring criteria for us with the feds when we submitted for the grant was through resiliency with the drainage. So that's actually where we scored the most points, was with the addition of the box culvert. Because some of the safety issues and crashes out there had to do with the outside lane would flood in rain concerns, and so a lot of the pedestrian accidents and even vehicular accidents all were due to the flooding.
And that doesn't mean, because the design will be part of that 3-year period.
Correct.
And so the contractor probably won't start for a period of time. So you might have a 2-year period of heavy construction, although hopefully it won't be all along the route at the same time. It'll be moving along as they build it.
We expect construction to begin about a year from today is what we anticipate.
Yeah, and I did want to recognize Justin and his team if I could, because we applied for a RAISE grant, and we're very fortunate to get a RAISE grant for that project. We had asked for $25 million, and they came back with only 18. So Justin and his team were able to find a way to get $7 million more to put on it and true it up. So we are fully funded on it. We were worried a little bit about that.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And that's, understanding the timeline is really helpful, not only for Florida Avenue, but as was described earlier with the overpasses, that work's already been, it's already doing. I mean, it's already happening. So it's just a shame that it's not being done, because while it does increase the sidewalk, it doesn't increase the perception of safety when you walk underneath it. And that was one of the reasons that needed to be open. That was one of the primary reasons that those underpasses were being opened. So thank you.
Commissioner Kemp.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things here. And I think it's important since a lot of the concerns have been expressed at these TPO meetings, I'm not sure if some of the other information has been. And one is that I think some of the vibration, it was determined that some of the vibrations that residents were experiencing and disturbed about, and thought it was due to the construction of the DTI or the reconstruction, was actually the city is doing the pipes program at the same time in the same area, and that some of the vibrations and disturbances that were happening were related to that, which is was going on, and that was a determination that was made. So I think that that's important to have that information forward. I'd also just like to say I very much appreciate it. I sat with Secretary Gwen and Justin, Mr. Hall, and Mingao, and Ms. LeGrand, and talked about the lanes, which I very much want to see, the dedicated transit lanes on Florida Avenue. I do feel like this work is a huge part of the job, and no matter what schedule we have, and I think it's important that we get these sooner than later. This is this will be a huge part of the work that's needed to make that happen. I will say that some of the work that's going on now, for instance, the signal that was placed south of Hillsborough Avenue on Florida Avenue, will that area also, that the road there be, because there's that kind of improved area through there, will that also involve the culverts and the stormwater?
I don't think it goes that far north, does it? No, it ends well south of there.
Okay. And just for the record, because I know that you mentioned, and this is part of what we talked about, and I just think it's important for people to understand this. And I know that there are sometimes lots of complaints that come with using a lane for transit, a dedicated lane for transit. But as I stated to you, several things. One is we don't have a BRT project at all in Hillsborough County, and I think, or the city of Tampa, and I think it's really important that at this time we recognize that and start to introduce that to people, because it's a whole different transit system that occurs when that happens, right down to buses being able to stop at the stops without stopping traffic behind them. I know that you had talked about sometimes the issues that occur, which couldn't have occurred here yet, although I know you experience them for other things, but they haven't occurred with our bus transit since we don't have any lane set aside. But the Tampa Street going down from Seminole Heights into downtown is very, very, very under capacity, which might shock people, but it's an open runway for at least 23 hours a day, and even the 1 hour of commute down, since it only leaves Seminole Heights and goes into downtown, it's basically it has multiple lanes with no traffic, and it's, I don't even want to announce this so that people go onto it, but it is a very, very underutilized. I don't think that there would be much missed in turning in a transit lane and designating a transit lane. In fact, I think it would be a perfect place to do that. And I even heard about, it could be businesses that would be affected and not want this. But quite frankly, the one-way streets turn areas around them into business deserts. That's what happens. And you can see that clearly on any of the streets you see when you have a one-way and then you go two-way, it pops to life. That's what happens. It's not sustainable for businesses on the one-way streets. I'm ultimately disappointed that after years and years and years, there's never been a plan and won't be to two-way them. But I think at very least we need to get these transit lanes in place, and I don't see that in fact, that's one of the advantages. It doesn't have that burden that maybe almost any other place would. As well, going north on Florida Avenue, as surprising as it might be, because that comes from downtown and travels north, but there's basically 2 hours of traffic on that every day from right now, from about 4 to 6, maybe a little bit after that. And the only traffic accumulation, the only places where there is right now problems is just south of Hillsborough, in between Martin Luther King and Hillsborough. And even when it just goes north of Hillsborough at Florida, it opens up. So there's, again, all during the day for 23 hours a day, actually not even a problem, or 22 hours a day, I should say. And there's that intersection, which a lane won't be set aside because it can't possibly, because it's too constrained there anyway. But just for the record, I just like to have that placed on it so that people understand that road. And I'll say that having the light there just south of Hillsborough Avenue and the improvements that have been made there have made a world of difference on that road. And it's wonderful, and having that crosswalk there, and I'm anxious to see more, because really the big problem is the drag racing that occurs most of the day, all the time, evenings, weekends, because it's such an underutilized, the two of those roads are so underutilized.
Thank you. Ms. LeGrand, I see you have your hand up.
I do. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to participate virtually. Just wanted to state that I have been working closely with David Gwynn and his staff to make sure that we complete the process that's required to have a lane dedicated for transit. So we are working collaboratively to do that. HART also has employed a consultant to help us with the application, and they're working on that as well. So I just, for the record, wanted to state, and I know there was some public comment requesting that we actually go through the process and submit the application, and just wanted to know that HART is working closely with FDOT, David Gwynn and his team, and we feel comfortable that the process as it stands right now will allow us to accommodate our transit needs, as well as take into consideration the construction that's required for the drainage. So I just wanted to make that official comment.
Thank you. All right, seeing nothing additional, I think we're going to move on to our regular agenda now, because we have a lot of things to cover, and we're almost through our first hour. Our consent agenda is our next item. We have a motion to accept the consent agenda from Commissioner Kemp, seconded by Commissioner Overman. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. We have 3 action items this morning. The first is the fiscal year 23 and 24 United Planning Work Program approval. Amber Simmons from TPO staff will cover this item. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. It's nice to see everyone in person. I'm Amber Simmons, And the action item you have before you today is the fiscal year 23-24 Unified Planning Work Program, which is essentially the TPO's program of projects and budget for the next 2 fiscal years. Next slide, please. The UPWP is updated every 2 years, and the TPO fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th, and amendments are done as needed between, and especially between the first and second fiscal years. The UPWP purpose is to both document and coordinate federal and state funding for transportation planning that's conducted by the TPO, FDOT, HART, and the Commission on Transportation Disadvantaged, or CTD. It also outlines our major planning tasks and complies with federal and state rules. Next slide, please. What you see here are 6 planning tasks and a new regional task called the SCTPA Support and Shared Task. This was developed as part of a regional project to make the UPWP task tables more uniform and to clearly define the task where a transfer of funds between MPOs take place. The only items to be listed in this new task are items that both transfer funds between MPOs and require an MOU or agreement to do so. Our other coordinated efforts will remain in Task 6. Next slide. The overall project funding is listed on this slide, and the majority of our funding comes from FHWA, PL, or planning, and the Surface Transportation Block Grant. This year, PL and FTA funds are combined and are treated as if all are PL funds. The deobligated funds that have added in fiscal year 23 are $55,170,000 in PL funds and $145,000 in SU funds, for a total of $200,170. The Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged state funds are also now included in the budget that you see before you. Next slide. We are also very pleased to report that our current disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE as it's commonly referred to, is at 14.5% of our consultant projects. The state goal is 10.65%. Next slide. This slide gives you an overview of the UPWP development schedule. Our first preliminary draft was sent to DOT on March 15th. Committee comments were in April, and we are on schedule for the final work plan for adoption this month. July 1st, the new fiscal year, UPWP becomes effective. Next slide. This slide, new project requests. These are the new project requests for the UPWP. From HART, we had a transit development plan, of which we're offering a 50-50 match to assist HART with the study. In the city of Tampa, we had several Vision Zero projects, citywide streetlight evaluation, signal timing program, corridor studies, and roadway safety assessments for multiple corridors. Streetcar feasibility study, phase 4. From Hillsborough County, the Hillsborough County truck route plan. And moving on to our critical path projects. The next few slides highlight the critical path projects, ongoing projects that began in our fiscal year 22 and will continue into 23, our optional recommended projects, and recommended projects with alternative funding. Our critical path projects are either previously approved and will commence in 2023 or are needed as part of maintaining compliance with federal and state rules. The estimated costs of these projects are $1.265 million. Next slide. The TPO other recommended projects have an estimated combined cost of $1 million. They include the Plant City Southeast Master Plan, Temple Terrace Multimodal District Update or other planning, support for the HART Transit Development Plan, road safety assessments for county roads in the city of Tampa, resiliency, return on investment, evaluations for projects, metropolitan priorities for state rail plan, and additional data collection for multimodal counts, health data, etc. Next. From committee recommendations, these are projects which are contingent on additional funding and have been more clearly defined with estimated costs. Also, per committee recommendation, the wording has been changed to reflect potential funding rather than imply any particular funding source. And moving on to our fiscal year 22 projects that will conclude in 23. And these projects that are in progress and will conclude in our fiscal year 23 and have estimated costs of approximately $80,000 and the remaining fiscal year 22 funds. Next slide. And our recommended action today is to adopt the UPWP for forwarding to FDOT and FHWA for final approval. Next slide. I'd like to open it up for any questions and comments.
Are there any questions and comments from board members? Commissioner Smith.
Thank you. So the Hillsborough County truck route plan shown on as one of the partner agency requests for planning and analysis is not making the funded list.
As a matter of fact, we did include it in part of our critical path projects, as we combined it as part of the some of the LRTP projects that we have. Let me see if I can find it.
Could I add to that briefly?
Because I just know that that's
Yes.
been a priority of the county for several years now.
Yes, it's in the second column of our critical path projects under goods movements and truck route plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Do I hear a motion? Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilman Maniscalco, seconded by Councilman Citro. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was nice to see you all in person.
Thank you. We are going to move on now to item B, which is the TPO Apportionment Plan, and Elizabeth Watkins from the TBO staff will introduce this item.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here today to present information on the TPO Membership Apportionment Plan and also summarize feedback from the TPO committees. Next slide, please. So what exactly is a membership apportionment plan? Well, essentially, this is the document that outlines the geographic planning area as well as the voting membership that makes up an MPO or TPO board. And this is both required from a federal and state perspective. Federal law requires that any urbanized area of 50,000 or greater is designated and represented by an MPO. And why are we talking about this right now? Well, state statute requires that every 10 years, in conjunction with a decennial census, that MPOs evaluate their structure and their voting apportioned membership. There are a few considerations that went into this proposal at the direction of the policy committee. The first of which was the importance of coordination and compliance with government in the sunshine. As you can imagine, often elected officials and transportation agencies and other partners need to meet to discuss transportation projects or policies. And if both members are on an MPO board, that meeting would need to be publicly noticed and conducted with government in the sunshine. It was for one reason, 10 years ago, state statute was updated to require that the Florida Department of Transportation no longer serve in a voting capacity on MPO boards, but in its current non-voting technical advisory position. The second consideration was there might be some perception that appointed or staff members may be less accountable to residents than elected officials who are elected by their constituency with each election cycle. The last consideration was population growth, since again that this requirement is to be done roughly every 10 years in conjunction with the census, and to document that the majority of the population in Hillsborough County resides in the unincorporated county. Next slide, please. So based on those three considerations, there were three different scenarios that were brought before the policy committee in April. And the policy committee voted 5-1 to support the scenario in which MPO, TPO board membership consists of elected officials, meaning the 4 jurisdictional representatives as well as the elected member of the school board. Those agencies that serve that serve transportation purposes or land use purposes that are non-elected officials would serve in a non-voting technical advisor position similar to the position that FDOT holds on the board today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So staff did an analysis of all the MPOs that serve transportation management areas similar to Hillsborough County and found that Hillsborough TPO is a bit of an outlier, with 63% of the voting membership on the board comes from elected officials. We also found that in every scenario, public transit was represented, and that's consistent with our proposed practice and in the proposed scenario. Next slide, please. So this is the proposal that was brought forward to all the TPO committees with those two changes that I highlighted earlier. First of which, having an increase in the non-voting technical advisor roles on the board, as well as increasing the number of votes for Hillsborough County from 5 to 7, consistent with that population, proportion of that population in the county. Next slide. Here's a quick breakdown of the 2020 census population, which shows that, again, about 70% of the population is in unincorporated Hillsborough County, about a quarter is in the city of Tampa, and 3 and 2% in Plant City and Temple Terrace, respectively. The far left scenario shows the proposed scenario, which increases that unincorporated Hillsborough County to 54%, so not exactly equivalent to that 70% representation, but greater than the current scenario, which is having 31% of unincorporated Hillsborough County represented in the current configuration. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, and it was discussed at the top of the meeting, there was really healthy and robust discussion at all 4 committee meetings. One point that was brought up frequently was that airports, ports, and transit systems are often county departments in other areas across the state, and that's not exactly our situation here. Even our planning commission is different than what's represented statewide. The city of Tampa, as was mentioned earlier, has many destinations and major stakeholders and much of the transportation infrastructure within the city, and that was another point that was made. Additionally, there was some concern about that priority and policy consistency if the board is made up solely of elected officials, just given election cycles and continuity concerns. Also, other members mentioned that one government could potentially outvote the other. Since Hillsborough County would have 7 votes, that would be greater, that would be, more than half of the 13 total votes. So if they all voted together, that, would be a higher, that could be perceived as a conflict. Yeah, sorry. And then the last thing, there was support for this proposal. One person put it eloquently that this is good governance. Elected officials are accountable to the public, and that was a comment that was made at various committee meetings. Next slide, please. So to summarize those actions, Davida did a great job describing earlier. The BPAC had lots of discussion, but there was no quorum, so no official action was taken. Livable Roadways Committee voted, I believe unanimously, to retain that status quo, the current makeup today. The Technical Advisory Committee did not put forth a formal recommendation. There was lots of conversation, but ultimately there were some members who didn't feel comfortable, who wanted to abstain, given that there wasn't any direction from those local governing boards. And then lastly, at the Citizens Advisory Committee, there was a recommendation to approve as proposed. Next slide, please. So to quickly recap next steps, very interested in your feedback today. We'll go back and revise the plan if necessary, and then from there, we'll seek agreement from all 4 local governments, then we'll route it through FDOT and ultimately the governor's approval. So that is a lengthy process, but I did want to emphasize that we do have time. There is no pressure to make a decision today. If more time is needed, we're positioned well in terms of that. So I'll pause there and take any questions or comments.
I see Councilman Maniscalco, and before I call on you, let me say I know there are lots of people that are going to want to weigh in on this, and we will have plenty of time for everyone to say their piece. So, Councilman Maniscalco, why don't you lead us off?
Please, yeah.
Thank you very much. We ran out of microphones, so here I am. I hope everyone can hear me. But in looking at the proposal and what exists, and looking at this chart that shows all the different organizations throughout the state, it's 78% have 90% or more all elected officials. And I started on the MPO then in 2015 when we had that marathon tip meeting on TBX. And that was probably the most contentious issue, or one of the most contentious issues. And listening to the feedback from the folks there, and looking here at how the different committees voted to approve or didn't make a motion or whatnot, the Citizens Advisory Committee, which is the people, not elected officials, that are appointed by us, approved moving forward with all elected. I believe in checks and balances. I believe in good governance. Elections have consequences. I think this is how it should be run, where it's elected officials. I understand you'll have all 7 county commissioners. You'll have at least a majority of, you'll have 3 city council members from Tampa, 1 from Plant City, Temple Terrace, and School Board. You know, we answer to the people. We're elected by the people. Looking at what TBX was when it was the interstate coming through and damaging neighborhoods, we saw, I mean, we were there for hours, public comment. I think it was maybe 5 or 6 hours. I think the people, again, the people that elect us, would likely be most comfortable where it's all elected officials. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, and very well said, and I couldn't agree more with everything Councilman Maniscalco just said. I would also ask everyone to give extra thought to the problems with sunshine laws as regards the status quo. Just this meeting, I would have liked to talk to the HART CEO, Adelaide LeGrand, and discuss the timing and planning of the BRT lanes that we're talking about here for Florida Avenue and Tampa Street corridor. I would have liked to have talked to her about that. I had a briefing with her as a HART board member. But because we're both voting members of this board, I can only talk to her about certain transit issues and not other transit issues. I mean, it really is hamstringing. And there have been other occasions too. So I would point out that non-voting members do not by any means lose their power to persuade us, to discuss things, to participate in our decision-making process, and they may actually be more effective in advising us if they are non-voting members and can talk to each of us in depth. I don't think anyone would say that Mr. Gwynn has no influence here because he's a non-voting member. And so I think it would work more smoothly as well as be more representative and answerable to the citizens if the non-elected representatives would be non-voting, but advisory members sitting here with us, as Mr. Gwynn does every meeting, but also available to speak with us in between, in depth, in detail. And I would also like to repeat the point that seemed to need highlighting last time, that the county commissioners also represent city residents. We are also elected by city residents and accountable to them, and can be voted out if we're not representing the interests of the cities of Tampa or Temple Terrace. The fact that we're an outlier, I think, really means that we should at least be pursuing this further and going to the next step of seeking input from the member governments. And so I hope we take that action today to move on with that. Thank you.
Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. I'll keep this very short. I agree that it would be wise to have the electeds on the board for a couple of different reasons. For those of you that aren't on Hillsborough County Board of County Commission, that sit on our land use efforts, you know, part of our whole process is getting a read and opinion on everything we do from our comprehensive planning department. They have the ability to give us guidance on how our project actually syncs up with our comprehensive planning. By not having 100% of the Board of County Commission that addresses our transportation decisions, there is oftentimes a disconnect between our transportation planning at the staff level, at the commission level, at the county level, per se, and what the planning is that we see here. And, you know, it's hard enough for citizens to understand transportation planning that's rather complex in the first place. But when you're trying to figure out who's accountable for making these decisions, recommendations, and moving forward, and then implementing it, that disconnect matters. It's very difficult for citizens to understand who's making the decision and who to hold accountable. So I agree with the proposed having all of the electeds there. I was hesitant, however, on the issue associated with HART. In many of our jurisdictions, although I do recognize the Sunshine decision here, in many jurisdictions, the transit agency is actually operated by the county or by the municipality. It's not a separate agency because it's such a core part of a community's transportation. So my only hesitation is that one, because, you know, they need to be part of the planning. The planning needs to be in sync. And so that was my only hesitation. But overall, I'm willing to accept that, you know, that the electives have a primary role, because we are, as we hear every public comment, for those that were elected that said on a regular basis. And so I think it's important that we set the board up that way so that we can be held accountable. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Overman. So I have Commissioner Kemp, and then Mr. Klug, and then Mayor Ross, and we'll keep, and then Councilman Citro. So we will keep moving around. Commissioner Kemp.
Thank you. As I think I've talked about before, MPOs, TPOs were set up in the 1980s, and they were done primarily in response by the federal government, prescribed by the federal government, because communities were disturbed, just as this community is now, by major highways going through urban areas and displacing and changing the face of cities across America. And it was done after the fact, but in response to get public input and give the public a voice, representation, official representation in response to what was happening in communities. This was the idea of TPOs. I have to say, I knew that we were a bit of an outlier, but I was kind of shocked by the fact that we are only 63% elected officials. And as was stated before, and very well made by Councilman Maniscalco, but for instance, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, respectively, 95% elected official, 95% in Broward, 88% Miami-Dade. I often look at Orange County over there, and I had a Metroplex or Orlando here, 79%. One of the lower ones, many of them are 100% elected officials, as I feel this plan, this alternative plan would be. There's two reasons to have MPO members. That's to speak to the public and to represent the public and their issues and concerns about this. And quite honestly, only elected officials are accountable to them. We travel. I am a county-wide elected official, as I know Commissioners Overman and Commissioner Smith are. So I also, we take a little difference about the city of Tampa representation in that 4 of the 5 elected officials from the county commission that are here are residents of the city of Tampa, and several of them, including Commissioner Cohen and Commissioner Myers, who's not here, have almost their districts almost entirely composed of the city of Tampa. And so there is, I think, significant, in fact, some could argue maybe over-representation in a way, and I've heard that argument before. But I do think it's very important that those that are here are accountable, that they're out in the community, that they're hearing things, that they are engaged and involved on and pretty much on a full-time basis or more than a full-time basis of these issues, and really deep into it and can be responsive. I also think it's that the citizens have a right to take us out if there's opinion about what should be being done, a direction that's being taken, and we're not responsive to that, then that is democracy, and that's what TPOs were meant to respond to. In terms of that, I think there's a second reason that the boards like HART, like the Port Authority, like the Airport Authority, the Expressway Authority were put on here. And those were for their expertise, not for their representation, for their expertise in these areas. And as Commissioner Smith pointed out, FDOT, there is no small engagement by FDOT in these meetings, as we all know, and they're not a voting member. And in fact, DOTs were voting members of MPOs across the state of Florida until I think about 5, I don't know, I know I understood that there was a directive put out that no longer would DOT's representatives be on the MPOs because it was considered an issue, a problem at some point in the state of Florida. So that's why they're not on here. If it would make sense if there's anybody that it would be the DOT representative in some ways if we're talking about engagement in the technical issues that we have. So I think it's really important for these other authorities or agencies to be represented here, as Commissioner Overman said, actually, in practically the entire state of Florida. The airport authorities, the big airports we know around the state, they're county departments. In Orange County, in Broward County, in Miami-Dade, they're county departments, as well as the port authorities, as well as the transit agencies. They're part of the county, so they're not, that's why, we have a very, very rare instance here in Hillsborough County where these agencies are independent, but what they should be is consultants for expertise here and not as representational votes.
Thank you. Mr. Klug.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go back to the actual statute that creates the MPOs, and it says in there that for voting membership, an MPO may include, as part of its portion voting members, a member of a statutory authority, authorized planning board, an official of an agency that operates or administers a major mode of transportation, or an official of Space Florida. If you look at this list that was on the board earlier about the apportionment around the state, the MPOs that have ports represented are independent port authorities. They're not departments of the county. And so the other ones you see there are departments of the county. There's a reason why we're an independent port authority, and there's also a reason why there's independent aviation authority here. We were both created in 1945 by the legislature, not by the county, not by the city. We were created to basically take over surplus war assets and to be a major mode of transportation. In fact, we're a very major mode of transportation in this county. We're the biggest port in the state of Florida as far as land. We're the biggest port when it comes to cargo. We own the sovereign submerged lands in Hillsborough County and trust for the public. We're the local sponsor when it comes to channels. Just our main shipping channel alone is 42 miles long. We have probably 80 or 90 miles of shipping channels in the county. So we're very much responsible for transportation in Hillsborough County. And that's why we have an option. It's not mandatory. We have an option to be a member of this organization. So we have that significant impact on the community. When ships come in and bring cargo into our community, they don't just leave at the port. They go by road and rail to other parts of the county. So, by the way, the Port District is the entire county. It's just not Hookers Point, it's just not Port Sutton, it's just not Port Red Wing, it's the entire county. We have a county impact, it's countywide. So we need to be working with this organization to make sure that our planning and our infrastructure improvements don't disparately impact the rest of the county. It's mutually beneficial that we're on this board as far as the Aviation Authority, the Planning Commission, et cetera, because we can see the concerns of this board. We can implement those concerns in our planning as well. And we do have an impact. We pretty much give great deference to the elected officials of the general purpose boards. But every now and then, we need to speak up, and we have. Back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we spoke up when there was a need to fund the I-4 connector. The I-4 connector was not even the top 10 list of priorities for the Planning Commission, and for the MPO. There were stimulus funds available in 2009, 2010. We actually put this on the top of the list. This had been on the books since 1990, the I-4 Expressway connector, and we got that funded, we got that built. We took roads out of downtown, trucks that is, out of downtown, out of Ybor City, and put them on the I-4 connector to go directly to I-4. So we do make an impact when we need to. It's important that we're here to respond to those issues. We're not just an advisor. As you can see from the list here of the different committees, the Technical Advisory Committee didn't take any action. It doesn't really matter in this particular matter because we're not addressing that. So for us not to be a voting member, it doesn't have the same gravitas. It doesn't have the same impact as a non-voting member. So I think it's really important that the voices of the various intermodal agencies be heard as well and have impact on this decision-making of this body. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you. I have Councilman Citro and then Mr. Lopano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Oh, excuse me. Mayor Ross, I apologize. You were before Councilman Citro, so we'll, it's unusual that everyone in the room wants to speak, but.
Thank you, Commissioner. And so much of what I wanted to say, Mr. Klug just said, so I won't echo everything. I do want to raise a couple of points, though, and one is that I believe there's too much emphasis being placed on the fact that these are non-elected officials. And the reason I say that is Mr. Lopano, Mr. Klug, Hart, they all are appointed employees, directors, executive directors, but they're appointed by boards who are comprised of either elected officials or appointees of elected officials. So the public does need to remember that there is some assurance that the power does reside with the people ultimately. If Mr. Klug or Mr. Lopano starts, I don't know, going off the rails is probably a bad, but I mean, you know, if the director of Hart or somebody's not acting satisfactorily, they do report to a board, and that board is comprised of elected officials or some combination thereof. The other thing I wanted to comment is we're putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that, oh my goodness, we're only 63%, and look at the other counties. And the point has been made a couple of times that it should be noted that in many, or if not all of those counties, some of these agencies that will be excluded from our TPO are represented by their county membership because they are county boards. The airport, the port, transit, those are all county boards. So they are represented by their county representatives. In our situation, if we do this, they will not be represented, will not have a voice in this. So if we're looking at being an outlier, that will make us an outlier because we will be a county of 1.5 million people where one of the top airports in the country, one of the largest ports in the state, transit, the Expressway Authority will not be voting members of the TPO. And I question how we can, as a board, truly say that we're fulfilling our mission of gathering all the major stakeholders in the transportation system together, and we all have a voice. And being a consultant or a technical, that's not the same as really having a voice. And so I just can't, I mean, I can be in favor of some reapportionment based on population trends. I don't have any objection to that. but I think we are making a huge mistake if we exclude these tremendously major stakeholders in the transportation system in our county, and we just relegate them to having an advisory role and not having a real voice.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. We're going to go to Councilman Citro and then Director Lopano.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. If I can have that board representation comparison list back up on the, thank you very much. This, Hillsborough County is very unique, and this TPO is very unique. If you look at the port authorities that are on this list, maybe Miami-Dade may compare with the Port of Tampa. We have the 11th. I'm hoping that is correct. I'm prejudiced. I would say the 10th largest deep water port. We are so different from every TPO or MPO up on that list. If you look at the Aviation Authority, hands down, again, I'm prejudiced, we have the #2 airport in this country. We are different than any other up there. Our port is growing by leaps and bounds. We have cruise ships coming in here and more scheduled to come in. That in and of itself is a transportation concern we have to deal with. Although the Tampa Airport is trying to get as many vehicles off the property, we do not have the transportation to get them there. That is still a transportation problem. Good one to have. The city of Tampa, I hate to keep repeating it, the population doubles every day from the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Board members, I feel that the city of Tampa needs more representation on this board. Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lopano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been on this board for 11 years, and I come here because I represent my board of directors. And my board of directors comprises 5 individuals, 2 elected officials who give me direction. We have a county commissioner and a mayor of Tampa who give me direction on how to vote in these meetings. So I am represented by elected officials. I also represent the needs of 20 million travelers. So when I make a vote on behalf of our citizens, but also on the travelers who come here and on what their experience will be when they're here. We bring travelers in all the time at 500 miles an hour, and then they stop. And they're not going to come back if they don't have good transportation options. And that affects all of us in every business in Hillsborough County. I also represent 17,000 employees who work every day at the airport. And some come on buses, some have their own cars. That's also one of my constituencies that I have to answer to. And we've been talked about as this great economic engine, and the port is a great economic engine. You're such a great economic engine, you're off the board. We don't want your vote. We're the only agency that's built an automated people mover system. No one here at any of these tables can say they've built an automated people mover system to take millions of cars off of congested roadways. We'll lose that perspective if we're not on the board. So thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I think Mayor Ross, said it very well. We are an anomaly, and everybody's pointed out because of the way that we're structured in this county. And we are. Thank you. And we are accountable, and these agencies are accountable to taxpayers in the sense that a lot of them are funded by taxpayer dollars. Some of them directly with ad valorem dollars. I think it's important to not just have the voice, but for them to have a vote as well. And I think sometimes the point was made that we're talking about long-range planning out to 2045, 2050, and all the elected officials around this table won't be here at that time. And it's important to have some agencies that will be here and continue on with plans that we set today and continue that in motion. And you made a great point about the extension for serving the poor. So, and I think also in the land of politics, it's nice to have some apolitical voices every once in a while that can add that appropriate perspective. So this is not the only agency that we have in the county that makes important decisions about taxpayer dollars, that has non-elected officials. The transportation development, for example, tourism development. You know, it's granted it's bed tax, but it's an important allocation of the use of those dollars for this community. And so if it stands to reason that this board should only be elected officials, then we would have to apply that same logic there, I would think. So, you know, and we do have the vast majority of this board elected officials. It's 11 out of 16. So the math is actually closer to 70%, not 63%. So I'm very much in favor of the status quo. I think under the circumstances and the way that things operate in Hillsborough County, I think that makes the most sense for this community.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to echo what Mr. Klug had brought up in reading the statute, and when I was looking at some of the other statutes. In subsection D, it says, in any other provision of this section to the contrary notwithstanding, any county as defined in section 125.011 may elect to have its county commission serve as the MPO. And with the proposal that we have, before us, with having all of the county commissioners, currently serving on the board and having that majority, in my viewpoint, I see, that is really what has happened. So when you go further into subsection D, when that is the case, it says here that the governor must appoint 4 additional voting members to the MPO, one of whom must be an elected official representing a municipality within the county, one of whom must be an expressway authority member, one of whom must be a person who does not hold public office and who resides in an unincorporated county, and one of whom must be a school board member. So when I look at the statute, I think that it's pretty clear that there is intent to have a non-publicly elected official on this board who would be a citizen voice. Now with the Planning Commission, we are just like the other agencies. We're independent, and I've heard a few other comments that have talked about how we are so different and we are not like other counties and other MPOs, but quite frankly, I don't really care how other counties operate. I don't think that we should really necessarily care how Miami-Dade does their transportation, how Orlando does their transportation planning. I mean, those are all unique cities and counties, and we are also unique, in our composition. So I just wanted to, to point that out, that I don't believe that, us as a planning commission not having a say, would be wise. And I believe that, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And I believe that if we want to, expand, I mean, we have the option to have, within the statute, 25, board members, and you want to add, additional elected officials. I personally don't think anyone on this board would, have a problem with that. But, to remove a citizen voice, I don't think that's wise, and I don't think that would be the intent of statute either. Thank you.
Yes.
Just a few thoughts, recognizing that, one, I'm the new guy in town, so just kind of add a few things. First, I do want to say that just due to some timing issues, I have not had a discussion with my board on this, so I'm not going to take a position right now, but I want to offer a few thoughts. One is the expressway authority that we have here that I oversee today, that's governed by our board, is a little bit unique. We invest 100% of our revenue directly back into this community, and not just on the expressway. We continue to invest in the greenway through the town. We are working directly with the city and reestablishing the grid system and helping with some of the Vision Zero components. So it does make us a little bit unique. We also, very much like Mr. Lapano, on the technology side, are one of the 3 U.S. DOT connected and autonomous vehicle testing and implementation sites in the country. So we have significant interaction on the federal side. And we are just here to try and advance some of that technology. And we, I would argue that we are also our own customers at times, where we work and connect, and the people in this region expect us all to work in an integrated manner and work together, and we can help people get to the airport, and we can help some of the freight get out of the port. But I just want to offer that we are unique, and sometimes what makes us unique sometimes makes us stronger.
Thank you. I see, I'm told, Ms. LeGrand has her hand up as well. So, Ms. LeGrand, let me call on you.
Thank you. Just quickly, I wanted to just share a bit. Again, I'm relatively new to the TPO board with my colleague, Mr. Slater. However, I do want to share that my role on the board, and I was excited when I was elected to serve in this capacity, because as HART, we provide the transit service for the entire county. And as you all are aware, we're going through a transitional period now so that we can really focus on how best to utilize our existing resources, as well as to attract additional resources so we can provide better service throughout the county. I represent the leadership of HART, which comprises of 14 board members, of which I'm fortunate to have 4 of them who also serve on the TPO board, but there are 10 others, 2 positions are vacant right now, who are also a part of the leadership of the organization. So when I sit and I talk about where our priorities are and our vision and what's important to HART, it's really the representation of the entirety of the board and the board's priorities. So I just wanted to state that, we do have our monthly board meetings and our committee meetings, and there is engagement with elected officials, and the public also has an opportunity to weigh in at every one of our meetings to provide their input. So it is a very collaborative, public-facing organization, and my role here at the TPO is representing that as well. And lastly, I would say that, I recognize that there's a lot of interest and a lot of focus on the TPO as it relates to how we better plan and fund transit. But sometimes things that are missed from the conversation are the bread and butter items that are really necessary for us to do the basic work. And I'll give you an immediate example, and that's the heavy maintenance facility. And I would say that my presence on the board and engaging closely with Beth Alden and her staff to find ways to reprogram dollars so we could advance that project is one of the, I would say, great successes of having the transit CEO sitting on the TPO board, because then we can really elevate in a meaningful way where we need to put funding so we can move projects forward. So I just want to share that, whatever decision is made, we're here to support the advancement of the priorities of the TPO, and also making sure that transit is well supported in everything that we do moving forward. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to make a couple of comments. I think everyone that had their hand up has had an opportunity to be heard. First of all, yesterday I received a letter from the chair of the Hillsborough County Aviation Authority. It just came yesterday afternoon, so we'll circulate that around so that the other board members can see it. But it's not all that different from what Mr. Lopano said. It makes some points about the unique nature of the airport, and I think would be helpful to give to everyone. First of all, I would remind everybody that in order for a change in apportionment, there needs to be the agreement of the local governments and also the agreement of the governor. And my own sense of the room is that, notwithstanding the feelings of some of the members, I don't think that we can certainly vote on it and see where it goes, but I don't think the current proposal, A, is going to pass, or B, in my opinion, I don't believe it would be acceptable to the governor, given the way that the governor's appointments are on things like the Port Authority and the Aviation Authority, which are represented here. When we talked about this in the policy committee, I expressed some reservations about removing the Port Authority, and I would extend those to the Aviation Authority as well. Part of my concern about the Port Authority was that even though I serve on it as a commissioner, I don't feel as though wearing the hat of a Port Authority commissioner and wearing the hat of the county commissioner are always the same thing. And I don't have the ability to divide my vote in half to represent the two different opinions. I have to vote one way or the other. And that concerns me because I do think that it's very important for these agencies to have a seat at the table. It seems to me that there might be a way of increasing the number of elected officials to the point where those that want a larger majority to be made up of elected officials could be done, and at the same time not necessarily removing all of or any of the agency heads. I think that we might be able to come to a better accommodation than the proposal that is on the table. So if anyone wants to make a motion, they're more than welcome, but my suggestion is going to be that we refer this back to the staff, that we give them an opportunity to digest the discussion that we've heard today, and that we bring it up again, perhaps at our next meeting, with the idea that if we can come up with a compromise framework, and what I mean by a compromise framework would be 7 county commissioners, but maybe one more Tampa City Council member, but also some agency heads. If we can come up with a compromise, then maybe we circulate it to the member governments and actually determine whether or not it would have the support to even be put forward toward the governor. Again, we can attempt to move this ahead as it is, but I don't think it has the votes, and I don't think it'll ultimately amount to any change in the apportionment based on what I'm hearing here today. Which is that?
One you just said about to ask staff to digest the conversation that we. My motion is to ask staff to digest the conversation that we've had today, and in light of this, maybe reconsider an apportionment plan that they could bring back to us that might adjust the representation of the member governments based on population while retaining all the other voices that have had that have expressed such strong desire to remain that it seems unlikely to pass any other way.
Okay, we have a second from Councilman Maniscalco. By the way, who knew there was so much interest in serving on the MPO? It's awesome. Okay, Commissioner Overman.
And it relates to actually the motion. I think what it needs to be very, very clear here is the decision is not to remove those entities that are on the board now. I mean, in what world would we have an MPO that did not listen to the advice of FDOT? Okay? I mean, we couldn't really work very well if we didn't have FDOT's advisory participation in our process, in our planning process, in our funding decisions. So it's not as though we're suggesting, and actually that was one of my concerns when we talked about changing it. If they don't have a vote, are they going to show up? And so I think what's going to be integrally important is to recognize that all of those parties have elected officials on their boards, I believe, with the exception of the Planning Commission, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a voting elected effort here. But I think it's also critically important that if there are any changes, and it were to just be the elected, that there has to be assurances that those agencies that are an integral part of our transportation process recognize that their advisory role, if that's where it goes, is a critical integrated part of the process. So, for example, we wouldn't be meeting if if Ms. Alden, who's the executive director of our MPO planning agency, were not sitting at the table, but she doesn't have a vote. So I just think it's important we recognize what we're suggesting here in terms of the makeup and the roles and responsibilities of the value of that participation.
Thank you. And Mayor Ross, I just want to point that the clock is ticking, but go ahead.
Yes, sir, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I will support this motion to refer this back to staff for further work. I like the general direction we're going, but I do want to say that although I will be supportive if the recommendation comes back to increase the voting members from the BOCC, it is very unlikely that I will support the increase in Tampa's representation. And I mean no respect to Tampa. I love Tampa. I really do, and Joe, I like you too. But the increase in VOCC representation is based on population trends, not on relative importance of one member over another. And I think that opens the door to some future slippery reasoning, and I don't want to open that door, because that would be the same thing later on as, I don't imagine this would happen, but the airport could say, well, we did too because we're double as important as the port. And I think if we start getting into that, we're going to run into trouble. The population trends, that's empirical, that's data. That's just the number of people that you represent versus Tampa. So I just want to lay the groundwork for that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And my sense is that we'll have another robust discussion when additional staff recommendations come back to us. You know, we have a public hearing in June, so we'll have it at our next regular meeting. If there is no more discussion, let's go ahead and take a voice vote on Commissioner Smith's motion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Clark, you know, I'm afraid we're about to lose our quorum, so go ahead.
And Mr. Chair, I can be very brief, and I'll stay seated just to save a minute. This item before you, board members, is the annual evaluation of the executive director. This is required by the MPO's staff services agreement with the Planning Commission. I received submittals from numerous board members. I compiled them into a total sheet that was submitted to the board members earlier this week, and all I would ask for is for a vote to receive the evaluation. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Why don't we go ahead and defer our status reports, and we will go ahead and stand in adjournment. And yes, go ahead.
So, board members, just very briefly, the bylaws amendment requires a reading, and then we would bring it back to you on your consent agenda next month. It is a very brief statement establishing a code of conduct. Based on our discussion last month, we took the Planning Commission's code of conduct and pulled out of it the elements that were applicable to our committees and board members. It has been reviewed by council and is supported. So I would recommend it to you and ask for your feedback on the language there if you have any changes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, and we are adjourned.